I guess where we'd like to begin is with your early life, to understand who you were as a young man coming of age as a Muslim in England.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, sallallahu sunnah. What do you mean, what age do you want me to start?
Start wherever you want to start.
Oh, okay.
Wherever you feel the beginning is.
The beginning? Okay, I'll cover quickly from the beginning in brief. I was born in Entebbe, Uganda. My father is Pakistani, my mother is Nubian. Her background is that the grandfather, or the great-grandfather, something like that, came from southern Sudan and then settled in northern Uganda. And at 8 years old, I came to the UK with my mother and my brother and sister. And then I was schooled here, primary school, secondary school, and college. I was doing fine in secondary school, and then college. College, I know the US have a different system. College doesn't mean university. It's just 2 years before you go to university here.
Do you have any memories of your early life in Uganda before you left?
Yeah, it's just, I remember throwing things at the monkeys when we were going to school, and then the monkeys throw things back. I remember the tadpoles in the water. I remember the plant where when you touch it, then it kind of droops, closes up and droops. I remember being scared of the chameleons, I think. I remember I remember my mother sitting with my sister out in the front of the house, and then a black mamba approaching from behind, and I said to Mum, I said, "Mummy, snake." And then I remember later on the drunk neighbor, he was drunk, and at the same time he was having a battle with a snake, so in the distance. I remember the locusts. One time we went out, and then it was near night, and then we were collecting the locusts. I think it was locusts or whatever. It was insects. I mean, we ate them. It was nice. I remember stealing my friend's toy. I think it was a lorry, and my mother told me to take it back, and I had to take it back and say sorry, which was very shameful. And then, and I remember a boy coming over, and he had one of these kind of camera things, that tourist type things that you pay, and then you look into it, and then you see images like the Eiffel Tower and things like that. And yeah.
What was the town like where you were living in Uganda?
Entebbe.
Entebbe.
I mean, it was. I just remember it dusty, like, but it was okay. I don't remember too much about it, but because I came here when I was 8, so those are my early memories. But it was sunny. I just remember it sunny, and it was okay.
Where did you settle in England?
Croydon.
Croydon.
Yeah.
Do you remember much about that neighborhood, or?
Oh, Croydon. I've lived Croydon 2 decades. I've been here 2 decades, so yeah, I know it. It's where I'm from in London. Yeah. I mean, in terms of memories, I mean, I went to school here, primary school, secondary school, college, and that's about it.
Do you remember what it was like making the switch from living in Uganda and coming to Croydon?
I guess because I was 8 years old, so it's not a big issue. The second thing is because you'd think that kind of maybe racism or racial aspect, or being different, people would treat you differently. It wasn't an issue because in Uganda, because my father's Pakistani, I didn't belong to a tribe, and I looked different. So coming over here and then being different as well in school, my school, primary school and secondary school, majority white. So there was very few black people, but it wasn't an issue for me because I was always different.
Do you have any memories of facing any racism at the time?
No, because when I came, there was this whole thing, and it surprised me that in primary school and in secondary school, the children themselves, my peers, had understood that racism is wrong, and they really did not like racists. They did not like people who were racist in general, and they knew it was wrong. So it wasn't something that I faced on a frequent basis.
What kind of a student were you?
I don't know, maybe it's because of Africa or my genes, but I'm the kind of student that does my own work. I'm self-motivated, and I think my mother instilled into me that the importance of education and learning, and maybe it's a genetic thing as well. That's where I incline. So I did okay. I mean, I wasn't the brightest, I wasn't the best, I wasn't getting A stars all the time, but you know, I was doing fine. Yeah.
Where did you go to college? To
Where did I-
university?
Oh, to university. I actually went to university after coming back from Guantánamo, but that's right, yeah.
Oh, no, I mean,
Oh, college.
let's go to your education before Guantánamo.
Okay, college was John Ruskin. Yeah. And then
To do what?
I was doing my A-levels. I kind of, like I said, I was going through a crisis. I started off with 4 A-levels, which was unusual at that time. I don't know why I was doing that. I think I say to myself, I was setting myself up for a 4 because I guess, I don't know why, but I started off with 4 A-levels. I think it was chemistry, physics, maths, was it biology or no, electronics. And then I dropped one, which is chemistry. And then maths, I wasn't doing too well. And then I took up general studies. And basically I just kind of scraped through. And when it came to college, I barely made it.
Did you have any idea of what you were studying for, what your future would be?
Yeah, it comes from Uganda. I had this thing about welfare, that because our background is poverty or poor. I had this thing that welfare was important, but I had this idea. I was just a kid that if you can do robots, if robots can do the work, then people have more leisure time. So so I had this whole thing about science and electronics and electronic engineering, and then I wanted to go into neural networks, artificial neural networks, because that was the next generation of computers and that kind of thing. So that's what I was looking to go into.
When you were growing up in Croydon, what sense did you have of the Uganda that you left behind? Did you ever go back there? Did you stay in touch with relatives? Did you?
No. I think there was, because I'm growing up, so I'm going from 8 to about 16, 17, and because we were immigrants in this country, there was whole restrictions on travel and so forth, and going back and etc. In order to get your British citizenship. So I think that kind of restricted us from going back, and basically we went back in 1999. So I was like 18, and I think maybe 19 or so. I think 18. In terms of keeping in touch, I don't know why, but it just doesn't seem that that side of the family. I don't know what happened, but we never kept in touch. And my mother keeps in touch. Obviously, these are her brothers and sisters, my uncles and so forth. But in terms of us, there wasn't any real connection with the Ugandan community here. I mean, in a small way, you got friends and things like that. You see each other sometimes, but not in a real meaningful way.
You mentioned crisis a number of times. Was that a religious crisis?
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about that?
Okay. The system in this country, let me think. Okay. Primary school, I mean, my mother used to tell me that I was Muslim, but then she used to tell me that I was Arab as well because I was Muslim. It was just a joke, because the Arabs are Muslim, so if you're Muslim, you're Arab. I remember that in Uganda, she did tell me one time to go into the mosque and then do like everyone else. So I went in, and then I didn't know what I was doing. So I saw someone washing their feet. I washed my feet. I was very young, before 8 years old. And then I went into the prayer hall and I saw people like praying, and then they were praying not the obligatory prayer because it's kind of standardized, systemized the obligatory prayer, but they were praying their own individual prayer. So I was confused. So I managed to do a prostration, but that's about it. And I remember that. So when coming to the UK, and in primary school, I had this idea that I was Muslim, but I didn't know what that meant. And I remember one of the memories I remember in primary school, I showed them how to prostrate, and they laughed. I was just a kid, not in a bad way. It's just like I was playing with them as well. But when you hit puberty, as it were, you're told you're Muslim, but there's nothing there. There's no definition of what Muslim is. What does it mean? And so in secondary school, I was atheist. And that went across through the whole of secondary school. And about 16, a friend of the family, he was young, in his late 20s, he died of a brain tumor. So I didn't think it affected me that much. I mean, it affected me, but I carried on. 16, I had my GCSEs. Those are your qualifications you get after secondary school, so you have to study for them, etc. So I had to revise for those. So I revised, and then I did I was happy with my result from the. Well, actually, no, I wasn't. I would have been happy with my result from the GCSEs, but for some reason, when I did get the result, it didn't mean anything to me. Sorry. Yeah, that was a big blow, because it's like, from 11 years old to 16, that's 5 years, I studied just to get these results. And these would lead on to A-levels, and these would lead on to university, and these would lead on to my career. And that was the plan. But for some reason, I get the results, and they're good results. I'm happy with those results. I should have been happy with those results, but I wasn't. So the thing is, at this juncture, when you leave secondary school, you go to college. Secondary school, they treat you like children. College, you're treated like an adult immediately. So with that kind of freedom, it kind of, tripped me up in a way. So I didn't know what to do. So I had to think about my future, what was my purpose in life, and so forth, etc. So I said to myself, okay, let's say my purpose in life is making money. So I'll make loads of money. But the thing was that death. If I die, no matter how much money I made, it won't stay with me. So I'm the type of person that if I do something, I like it to last. I don't like things being taken away from me once I've worked hard and I feel that I've earned them. So I said women, but the same thing, you die. Whatever I thought of, the culmination of it was that it just meant nothing. And I mean, I was one of those people who kind of would visualize success. So, I'd be successful in one thing or another thing. I mean, I like martial arts, so you visualize you're an excellent martial artist and so forth. But every time you come to that peak, there was always that kind of depressive drop, that there's nothing after that. And that kind of really threw me. So I started asking questions about, what is the purpose of life and so forth. And, what I was taught in school is that when you have a question, you go and look in the books and get the answer. So I went to the local bookshop and I started looking at the spiritual section, and I picked up a few books, and the one I picked up on was Zen Buddhism. So I picked up Zen Buddhism and I started reading about Zen Buddhism, and Zen Buddhism had some answers to those questions, but they weren't the right answers. But I said, I didn't know they weren't the right answers. This was great. I thought to myself, these are the answers. Karma and the cycle of life, and good deeds and bad deeds.
What were some of the answers that Zen Buddhism seemed to offer?
Okay, the issue is, it's all about what is the purpose of life. So why do you die? So what happens after you die? So Zen Buddhism gave an answer to why, what happens to you after you die. There has to be something that happens. It can't just be like the cruel world and injustices and then that's it. And then the second thing was, Zen Buddhism gave an answer to why is it good people, bad things happen to good people. That's an important question. I think a lot of atheists have trouble with that. Then it was like, I guess not really an answer, but it proposed Zen Buddhism that you should do good deeds, and the reason why you should do good deeds. And then I guess that those were the answers that in a way that I guess I was looking for. And it also proposed, I like the story of the Buddha, the first. I mean, Buddha is a title, it's not an actual name, but the first Buddha, because he gave up, according to the story, princely riches in order to go to live a hard life, in order to find the truth, to relieve all creation of suffering. So his thing was creation, and that kind of resonated with my welfare kind of thing. So there's this kind of shift. I became disillusioned with machines bringing happiness to mankind and giving that welfare, and then you start looking elsewhere. And religion was kind of the thing that kind of filled that void.
What was the follow-up to that?
Okay. I'm in Croydon, and I've got a book on Zen Buddhism, and from the bookshop. So I consider myself a Zen Buddhist, and then I have to meditate. So I'm trying to meditate, and I'm trying to sit in half lotus position. It's hurting, and then when you meditate, you're not supposed to think good or bad. You're not supposed to have any thoughts. So it's not really working out because my legs are hurting, and the Zen Buddhism is kind of like the meditation is not going the way I thought it would. So to cut it short, basically I came to the conclusion Zen Buddhism wasn't a religion for a practical life. That's my conclusion, that you had to be in a monastery and you had to be away from real life to practice it. So I kind of put it aside in terms of the meditation, etc. But the aspect of welfare, like for instance, if you walk, you shouldn't step on the ants and things like that. You should show compassion to the creation. Those kind of remained with me. I started working in Oxfam, a charity shop, because originally it was because I thought my store of bad deeds was more than my store of good deeds, so I should do some charity, to kind of even it up. So I started working in Oxfam and doing some charity there, voluntarily, and that kind of thing. But obviously then that question was still there, what is the purpose of life? And Zen Buddhism didn't answer those questions. So in secondary school, if I just jump back slightly, we get, I think, assemblies when the class just sits and then someone comes and talks to you. And one time there were some Christians that came to talk to us and they gave us a copy of the New Testament. Unfortunately, some of the other students, they didn't really show any much respect for it. They were spitting on it, jumping on it, kicking it, and so forth. I took mine back and I put it in a shelf. I don't know why, but I had this kind of sense that if I'm not going to read it, at least just kind of show some respect to it. And it stayed there. I mean, at least 2 years. This must have been 14 when they came. So it's more than 2 years actually. I'm 17. So I got the inclination to read the Bible. So because it was the New Testament, I got myself a copy of the full Bible, Old and New Testament, and I decided to try to read it from page to page, so from cover to cover. I didn't get far. I got to the Ark of the Covenant and its dimensions, and then I decided to read the New Testament, which is kind of more. It's a bit easier to read because the Old Testament is a lot of detail. It's very grinding, and then Kosovo was happening at that time, so. And I'm reading Revelations as well, so obviously I'm putting 2 and 2 together and getting 2 million. So I thought to myself, oh, this is World War III. And then, but Christianity, it didn't make sense to me. I was thinking about it, and there was things that I didn't kind of agree with. So that kind of didn't last long. It didn't last long with the Christianity, but I got myself across, and but it was not so much the image of Christ as my savior. It was more that back to that suffering thing again, and the welfare. That it was an image of someone suffering for a good cause in a way. So, like that. But I guess the Christianity didn't last long. And then it's things got hard upon me really. To cut a long story short.
Don't.
We don't do that in oral history.
oh, sorry.
We want the long version.
Okay, all right. Okay, so basically, atheism right now is winning, and I'm 17 years old. So, admittedly,
What do you mean by atheism?
You just don't believe in God. Finish. You don't believe there's a higher power. You just believe that. I guess you believe humanity is the highest power there is, something like that. I don't know. You don't believe in God or anything supernatural in a way. That's atheism.
When you say winning, there's a battle for your soul?
I knew there was the truth out there. I was searching for the truth, but Zen Buddhism wasn't it, Christianity wasn't it, and it was just like I couldn't find it. So obviously, if you're searching for something that you don't. It's not like I knew. It's like I read it in a book somewhere and I forgot where the book was and I got to search for that book. You're just something innate in yourself that you know that the truth is out there. But sometimes you maybe become disillusioned. Maybe you think of yourself, you're fooling yourself, like that. So that's the kind of battle that I think that I knew the truth was out there, but it was only more of a hope. and obviously hope can rise and fall, but it was just hope because I didn't have anything definite. I hadn't seen it. It wasn't a flicker. Someone told me about it, but it's approximately over there, and then I had to go search for it. It was just something within myself that came from within myself, telling me that there is a truth out there. And when you become disillusioned and you start losing hope, then it's the atheism. And with atheism, the world just becomes a very harsh place. And so, 17, let's just say I became suicidal, and I did try to kill myself. Because I thought to myself, there's no point in life. The pain of living was, to my thinking, the pain of living was more than if you ended your life. Because if there's nothing, then it's just zero, isn't it? And you can get away from the pain, but you don't experience the pleasure of life. So I was just like...
Did you have friends that you shared these thoughts with?
It's strange. It's just like during secondary school, I don't know what happened. I mean, I had colleagues, but no real friends. I don't know why it is, but it's just kind of, there was always a disjuncture that I don't know why, but I don't kind of relate to people in a very kind of close way. So there was a disjuncture. But once you leave secondary school, I mean, that's the life you've known for 5 years, and you grew up from child to an adult. Young adult, but an adult, and then you come to college, then it's like, you've got to make those friends all over again. But if you're questioning your purpose in life, then your interests and who you are and what you're about, then you're not going to, if you're not settled within yourself, how can you find friends who have the similar values and similar outlook when you don't know your own values or your outlook? Like that. So yeah. So really, like I said, atheism was kind of winning, but it was necessary that I was broken down. So things had to become hard until I cracked. And basically, I just remember being in my room and then saying, "Oh God, help me." This is very strange because before I didn't believe in God, and with Zen Buddhism you don't believe in God. You don't believe in God, but I asked God to help me, but then I got angry, and then because the help didn't come immediately, so I got angry, and then I was like, I can't remember whether I smashed something or something like that, but I was a young teenager, so whatever. And then so it was like 2 suicide attempts. One was aspirin, another one was paracetamol. And then, but obviously then, I didn't kill myself because I'm here. And then my third suicide attempt was it was silly, but I wasn't thinking straight. Because I spoke to someone and they said how, go travel and things like that. So it wasn't a suicide attempt. The first time I tried it, I went to Scotland as far north as I could, and I said, I'm just going to make my way down south again. And then if I have to walk it, I have to walk it. So, it's just kind of one of those things that, I guess I had to get away and just walk to actually try to find meaning in my life. And then, I managed to make it because there was a lorry driver who gave me a lift, and then he liked my sign, due south, because there was a program called Due South with a Canadian on a horse, and so I copied the name and put it on the side of my backpack, and he liked my sign, so he took me half of the way, and then he dropped me at a park, and then there was some other guy who was a horse, he did something with horses or something, he took me a part of the way, and then he paid for my train ticket home, and then I sent him a check, to cover the costs afterwards. So I managed to do that. And then, but my third suicide attempt was, I said to myself, right, that's it. I'm gonna just go, and I'm gonna travel east, Europe, and then just go across. And I'm aiming for Japan, but I don't think I'm gonna make it. I'm probably gonna die on the way. So that's what I did. I just went to Europe, France.
Mohsen mentions that in his book. You've read it, obviously.
Yeah, I don't remember.
What do you think of the way in which he presented you at that point in time?
I can't remember what he mentioned, actually. I read the book, but it was a long time ago.
He
so
mentions
I don't know.
that you were going to walk to Japan, but you met someone in Switzerland who could.
Oh, yeah. So that's the story. I guess I told him, but I don't remember that part in the book. So, but it was a long time since I read it. So, yeah. So that's it. So I went to France, and I remember going through Lyon. I wasn't thinking straight at that time. I was just like, just walking,
So how old were you at this point?
I must have been 18. 18. Yeah, so I'm just walking, and I'm sleeping rough. I'm sleeping on park benches, and and under trees, and just going. And then all I remember is one time I decided that I was going to walk more of the day, so walk a greater distance, because what I was doing, I was just walking to one town and then staying there, and then sleeping over, and then walking to another town. So I thought, let me just walk further, because there's no point in me just sitting and just staring at whatever in a town, whatever, not doing anything in there. And then the back of my heels got cut because blistered one time. So I decided to catch trains, and then I ended up in basically I ended up in Kreuznegger. And Kreuznegger, I can't remember, because I was crossing one border and another. I was just crossing over. So I crossed over so many times they got used to me, so they just waved me past. They wouldn't look at my passport. But I ended up in Kreuznegger, and some guy, he spoke English, and he said, "Oh, if you're looking for the refugee camp, it's over there." I said, "Oh, thank you," but I was making my way to Italy. I didn't say that to him. That's what I was making my way, and then it's like, okay, my memory is a bit. I don't know whether I made this trip twice or once. I think that at that time I decided to walk again, because I think the wounds on my back of my leg. Let me think. Yeah, I think I decided to walk again because the wounds on the back of my kind of heels were kind of getting better. I think I kind of rested them a bit, and so I made my way and I followed the path. And then what happens is you have pavement, sidewalk, and then it just becomes grass again. And then I looked at it and I started walking, and then a lorry went past, and it just reminded me of that journey that I was doing before, because it's just loud, hot air, turbulence, things like that. And I thought to myself, I don't want to really go through this again. Yeah? It's hard enough doing it once, but I'm going to have to go back to this again. So I turned round and I thought I'll try the refugee camp. So I just remember walking up a hill, and it was a sunny day. And all during this time, because it'd been hard, it hadn't been easy, sleeping rough. It'd been really hard, and this must have been a week of this. I'd said to I'd been praying to God, "Oh, God help me, God help me, oh, God help me." And then, a voice within myself said, do you really believe in God? So I thought to myself, this is strange, why am I asking myself this? And then the voice said again, "Do you really believe in God?" And I said, "Yes, of course." And I feel that now, and I felt it, I think then, and a few months after, is that some people, and it mentions it in the Quran, that some people, like when they're stranded on a ship and the waves are kind of battering the ship, and there's likelihood that they're going to die, they ask God for help. But once they're on shore, then they forget that they ask God for help, and they forget God. So I felt at that time I was affirming to myself that I'm not going to go back. I'm not going to deny that what I've affirmed at that point in time. So I go to a refugee camp. I was open. I gave him my British passport. I'm expecting them to slam the door in my face. The guy calls me in, and then I'm thinking, okay, what's this? Strange. They're letting me in. So I'm in the refugee camp, and I think I was there for a week, and they gave medical attention to the back of my heel. I got food, etc. While they were checking my papers and checking the passport was genuine, I guess, and etc. And there I met a Kashmiri, and he was trying out his English. So he told me about Allah, and he told me about saying Bismillah, like in the name of Allah before you eat. He told me about Pakistan and Kashmir and the jihad over there, and he told me about saying La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, like there's no strength and power except the strength and power of Allah if you're in trouble and things like that. So he taught me that. So before then I'd affirmed that I believe in God, and then he just kind of confirmed to me, just informed me who my God was, and that's Allah, and my religion is Islam. And then so basically the refugee camp, they turn around and tell me I have to leave. If I don't, they're going to imprison me. So I have to sign this paper if I want to go. So I signed the paper, and then I took my passport, and then basically I was, I left, and then I made my way to Zurich, where I called my mum, and then I asked her to transfer some money over, and then I caught a Eurostar, and I was back at home. And then, yeah.
You were not mugged?
Huh?
Wikipedia says you were mugged.
Okay, okay, I'll admit it. The mugging incident is not. I had to, in order to, for some reason, to account for certain things going missing, because I had this thing that I wasn't going to turn back, so I got rid of some stuff in the garbage. I think it was my card, my debit card, and then in order to account for it to the bank, I told them, yeah, I got mugged, but I wasn't mugged. No, I was not mugged. But yeah, so yeah.
What was the next? You came back. Now you're a Muslim, or going to be a Muslim. What was the next step?
Okay, the next step is coming back. I was praying to Allah, saying, Allah, get me back home, and I'll read the Quran. If you get me back home, I'll read the Quran. So obviously I come home, and my mother is there, and then she kind of asked me what I was doing, where I'd gone, because I hadn't told her, and what I was up to, etc. I kind of answered evasively, and then I said, "Oh, Mum, can I read your Quran?" Because she had a copy from my aunt had given her a copy because her background's Muslim, and it was a translation of the meaning of the Quran, Abdullah Yusuf Ali. It used to be in the living room. It was just there, and then it wasn't really read. So I said, "Oh, Mum, can I read your Quran?" She was surprised, but she said, "Yeah." So I started reading Quran, and then I considered myself Muslim, and then I had to learn how to pray. So my aunt, because her background's Muslim, I went to her, and then there was a family friend, and then so he was Sunni, and then my aunt said, "Oh, you should learn Arabic as well. So go to this guy who is Shia." So I'm a new Muslim, and I'm going to the Sunni, and he's telling me one thing, and I'm going to the Arabic lesson of the Shia, and he's telling me another thing. So okay, now I'm getting a bit confused.
This is all in London.
This is all in London. The thing is, yeah, I'm becoming confused because they're saying different things. And as a new Muslim, I believed that all Muslims were, we all thought as one, we prayed as one, we acted as one, we're all the same. I didn't know these differences. So I'm coming across this divide, Shia and Sunni. So basically, okay, there came a certain issue. I asked the Shia, I asked the Sunni and I asked the Shia about something, and then the Shia basically guy gave me an answer. He said, "Oh, Abbasi, we live in a modern world, etc. Blah blah blah, whatever." I didn't feel comfortable with that answer because I thought to myself, I didn't become Muslim in order to just go back to the way I was before, and you're telling me that we live in a modern world and that's what I have to do. So that was one thing that kind of I thought was a bit iffy with the Shia's interpretation of the thing. And the second thing, I was going to a bookshop, Islamic bookshop in the mosque, and I picked up a book on death and the hereafter, and I was reading that, and in there was one part that said, anyone who curses the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, may Allah mention him amongst the angels and grant him peace, and anyone who listens to them, would be cursed, or something bad will happen to them. So there's the Shia, they curse the companions of the Prophet Muhammad. So I read it, and I was kind of dubious because I was thinking to myself, I didn't know what to think. So for some reason, the book couldn't get out of my mind because I didn't buy it at that time. And then like a week later, something like that, I went and bought it. And on the bus, I was flicking through, and it came to the same page, and it came to the same part. Anyone who curses the companions of the Prophet Muhammad, something's going to be bad if you actually, even if you don't curse, but you're listening to it. So I thought to myself, I'm not going to take the risk. I'm not going to that Shia again. So that's how I became Sunni. Yeah.
But then how did you learn Arabic?
Okay, I didn't. Arabic has been a struggle for me for a long time. It's, the Shia, when I went to him, he was teaching a higher level. He wasn't starting from the basics. And because I was kind of an adult, he didn't put me in with the kids class. So he said, if you just hang around and stay, and maybe you pick up something on the way, and then we'll start the lessons again, and then then you can pick up from there, because they were advanced. So the best I could do was just copy what he was writing on the board in the hope that later on I would understand it, which kind of gave me practice with my writing, the Arabic script, but nothing else because I didn't understand any of it. And then, but I guess he saw it as an opportunity to kind of indoctrinate me and turn me into a Shia.
So you've chosen the Sunni path. What next?
Then I learned how to pray, and then the thing is, when you become Muslim, there's like the first 6 months is like a honeymoon period. So it's very you feel your faith is very high. Your chest is expanded, and you're kind of easily touched by certain things. Like I remember reading the book of the narrations of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and when there was a battle called Uhud, and the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was struck in the face, and he lost a tooth. The thing is, the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that any pain we feel, he would feel double. It was a thing that he got a double reward, so he would feel double. So any pain he felt. So if he had a fever, he would have double the fever of a normal person. So, being in that state in those 6 months, reading that, it will bring you to tears, because you're thinking, what are these people doing? This is the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's being struck in the face like this, and he lost a tooth. He was bleeding. You're touched by those things. But after 6 months, then the thing is, when you become Muslim, when you say I believe, you're going to be tested. It's not just about affirming it and that's it. You have to show that you were true to your word. And then, after 6 months, then the test came. So I decided to set my life kind of straight again. I'd got a job with Macros part-time, which is a wholesaler's, just stacking shelves and so forth. But I felt that, I was still in Croydon, my life was still going, I was still walking the same streets. I'd walk the same streets, and I would think to myself, they haven't changed. The streets are the same. The people haven't changed, but it's me that's changed. And I found it very hard to kind of live my life. Basically, I felt my faith was new, and it was very tender, and it could easily be washed away if I just carry on walking the same streets and living the same kind of life in the same place as I was doing. But I came to learn of Finsbury Park Mosque and Sheikh Abu Hamza, and so I decided to attend some of those Friday sermons, because I was in the South Croydon, so it's very hard to go to Finsbury Park. It's a long distance. You go from South East, and then you go all the way through Central London, and you go back up north and stuff like that. So I started attending some sermons there, and then it was, I think, Ramadan. So Ramadan, then there was some issue about, because the mosque was run by volunteers generally, so there was some issue about security. There was no security at night, and they were worried because the mosque allegedly was taken over by force. There was worry that the people that it was taken over from, they'll come back and take it over by force, something like that. There was some nonsense politics happening before I came, so there had to be security. But the person doing security was alleged not to be doing the security in the way they should do, so they kind of got upset by it. So I said to myself, well, let me help out. I'm not really doing anything with myself. I thought I was just going to help out for I don't know, like during the end of Ramadan or something like that, until everything got back to normal. But I ended up staying there for I think a year. So I lived in Finsbury Park Mosque. Part of it was that I think, my family at home, because before I'd stay with my family at home, the change wasn't really accepted. And you find this a lot with someone becoming Muslim, that they're not really accepted by their own family members. This goes way back to day one of our history. Your family will disown you. I'm not saying my family disowned me, but they didn't. I felt they didn't accept me, and so I went somewhere where I felt some kind of acceptance, and that was Finsbury Park Mosque. So I was living in the mosque. I was security. making sure no one came raided the mosque from the people that it was taken over from.
Did anybody try to raid the mosque?
Oh no. We just had some unfortunately some crazy. Some people were kind of a bit not straight in the head, jumping the wall and running through the back door and stuff like that. I mean, they lived there, they stayed there, but we had this policy that after a certain hour you can't be coming and then expecting the door to be open and things like that for security reasons, and then they'll jump. So I'd kind of corner them and then give them a hard talking to, but let them go because they're going to do it again, that kind of thing. But nothing much happened, alhamdulillah. So it was good. It was good. I didn't have to get involved in any altercations or anything like that. Yeah. So Finsbury Park Mosque. Okay, there's this whole thing about Afghanistan being the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. Now the thing is, I think this is poorly understood. A country is not an Islamic country unless it's Sharia is applied across it. It doesn't matter how many Muslims there are in that country. It could be majority non-Muslim, but it's a matter of which law is applied across it. So the only country in the world at that time that was an Islamic state was Afghanistan, because the Taliban were applying Sharia law. So every other Muslim is just a Muslim country, meaning...
Iran wasn't considered?
No, they don't apply Sharia. They don't apply Sharia law in the way that, I mean, the Shia, they have a very different interpretation of... they don't accept a lot of narrations from the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, because of their kind of animosity to certain companions around the Prophet Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam, and then therefore their law kind of is skewed in a very different way. So the only place was the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, and there was this whole thing about hijrah. Hijrah is to emigrate for the sake of your religion. In Finsbury Park, this was the big thing, move to Afghanistan, the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. At that time I'd been living in the mosque and as a recluse, because I found it very hard to go out into that society. My faith was new, and it felt like that if I got back into society, I got a job, etc., I'd slowly lose it. So I was worried that would happen. I mean, I tried to get a job. I said to myself, there's very few options in terms of jobs for someone who wants to practice their religion. Let me become a road sweeper. There's no point being arrogant about it. I'll sweep the road. At least then, I don't get into business about, for instance, if you work like with macros, they were okay at the beginning, and then they started to ask me to work in the meat section, and then you have to deal with the pork, and then they'll put alcohol, and it just became silly. You end up getting into that. So I thought road sweeper, sweeping the roads, you can't get into much trouble doing that. But the guy said, "Oh, I was silly because I was frank to him. I said, I'll do the job. I'm going to have to pray sometimes, but I'll pray on the street." So I said, I'll pray on the street. It won't take long, 5 minutes. But he said, no, if you're working for a team, then you're going to be delayed and a load of nonsense. So he didn't take me as a road sweeper. So I couldn't get a job as a road sweeper. So what could I do? So I thought to myself, I'm going to have to get out. I'm going to have to bail out. That's it. So I jumped onto the Hijra project. And then, so I jumped on the Hijra project, and then this was November 2000. So I left for the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan.
And at this point you're 19, 20?
I think I'm 20.
20.
Yeah, I think I'm 20.
You went to Afghanistan.
Yeah.
What were your first impressions of Afghanistan when you got there?
First impressions? I don't know, for some reason I'm type of person who kind of, if I move from one kind of scenario to another, at least when I was younger, I'd accept it, really. I don't know whether it's from my childhood, it's just the way I am. So yeah, it's not something big. But it was nice. I mean, there's no kind of, I mean, I wasn't shocked by anything or that kind of thing. It was just like, it was a different country, and then that was it. So I don't remember any kind of special memories about my first going there. Yeah. Well,
not only the physical environment, but a religious environment.
If all you know is security, in a way, you don't kind of appreciate it until it's gone. And the thing is, with the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, I didn't realize how much kind of security and peace I had, that my values and the person I am and where I want to be and what I want to be doing was there until I was taken to Guantánamo. And the stark contrast really kind of showed me what I'd lost. And it's something that pains me today because, you know, I guess regret is the worst thing in life. And, you know, I really regret not actually appreciating what I had then because I don't have it now and it burns me.
You were in Kandahar?
Yeah, so yeah, I spent most of my time in Kandahar. And the thing is with Afghanistan, I kind of expected, and I wasn't wrong in my expectation that, you know, my values and would be upheld. It was a Muslim country, I was happy in that regard. But I also accepted that people would accept us. And I thought it's going to be kind of like a homecoming. We're the brothers, that the unknown brothers, and we'll come and then we'll be appreciated by the society. And we'll be accepted within the society, we'll get jobs, we'll marry, we'll live as Muslims in the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan. But unfortunately that wasn't the way. The Afghans considered us foreigners, but it was more like the middle-aged ones, the older ones, the ones that had seen the Russian jihad, the ones that had seen the Arabs come and fight and die and bleed and lose limbs, sacrifice. Alongside them, when they saw you, they appreciated. They came and they greeted you warmly. They referred to you as a traveler and said to you, you know, pray for me. They really, it's like they saw something, and it was something from their experience and their past. But unfortunately, the younger generation, the late 20s, early 30s, they just saw you as a foreigner. And what are you doing in this country?
Can you remember an episode of that kind of interaction?
Yeah, we went to the mosque, and then the local mosque, and me and some of my brothers, we prayed there. And then one of the Afghans, he spoke some English. He came and he said, "What are you doing here?" So I was like, I think we just came to pray to the mosque, you know, like, what's the issue? He said, "What are you doing here? You came to kill Afghans. That's what you came for, to kill Afghans." I was like, "No, what are you talking about? You came to kill Afghans." It's like that. So one of the other brothers, he said, you know, if you carry on like that, keep on saying that, we'll take you to the Taliban and they'll interrogate you. And then he said, no. He said, forgive, Allah forgives, forgive. So I said, you know, you're forgiven, brother, but where did you get that idea from? But unfortunately, that's the kind of, you know, that's the mentality. And then they would raise prices on you in the shops, and the taxi driver would raise prices on you and so forth. He wouldn't charge you the Afghan rate and things. They thought you were kind of rich. You were never part of the society. And one time I wanted to get married. I asked someone, and he was blunt. He said, you know, we don't marry our women to people like you. That was it. You know, there was no inquiry. There was nothing. It was just blunt. So in a way, it was a very it's troubling, because here in the UK, I mean, I can get a job, I can get by society, you know, in that regard, in the everyday kind of daily thing. But the law of this country and upholding my values and accepting me as a equal citizen in this country is not there. But over there, the Sharia, my values are upheld, the law is upheld. You know, I feel that, you know, my security, if there's any wrong, I'll be judged by a law that I agree with, and the result, whatever the judgment is, I will accept, because I feel that it's in accordance with the Quran and Sunnah to the best of their ability. When it came to the people, to get a job and get married was no way. So it's strange, very strange.
You said we and us a number of times. Who are the we and the us?
Oh, in Afghanistan? Oh,
Yeah.
We're the foreigners. We're the
Okay.
foreigners. Anyone who was foreign.
Just a generic we.
Yeah, it's just generic. Anyone who is foreign, if you're not Afghan, then you're just well, they can. If you're not Afghan, you're automatically Arab, no matter where you came from. So you're just Arab. And but they had there were some issues. I think they thought I was Chinese, because all they knew was Afghanistan, Pakistan, and then anything further was China. And then because I was black, so they assumed I must be Chinese. They didn't know beyond. Some of them were kind of they weren't very versed in kind of like geography and stuff like that. Yeah, so yeah, the best approximation they had was Habashi, which is there was a companion of the Prophet Muhammad, he was Bilal, and he was Ethiopian, and then the term Arabic is Habashi. So because they know the narration, they've read the stories and things like that, so they knew it was black, so then they say, oh, you must be Habashi. So meaning I'm from the same tribe as this companion Bilal. So it was close enough, you know, Ethiopia, East Africa, Uganda, all right. That was the best, but some of them were like China, and what can you do? Yeah, so I wasn't accepted in a society in a way, and I tried to get by.
How did you communicate with people with Afghans?
Oh, you didn't. You just learned. You tried to learn the language to the best of your ability. I mean, there were some English speakers there in that regard, and then you know, that was it. You know, you did your best, and then so basically, I think the next significant thing must be Masood Shah Ahmed. There was this whole thing. Taliban had
The commander of the Northern Alliance.
Yeah, sorry, Northern Alliance. Yeah, Taliban had 90% of the country, 10% was held by Masood. Taliban had the numbers. Masood was tactical, very good strategist, and he was holding the north, something about 10 lines or something, the mountains in the north, which is even the Russians had trouble kind of breaking that stronghold. It was formerly Mujahideen, and during the Russian-Afghan jihad, and then so he was holding that area, and then he gets killed. We hear about it. I thought to myself, that's it. 10% Taliban are going to take the whole country. The whole country is going to be unified. This is great news. I think a day later, September 11th happens, and it's September 11th happens.
Did that have any meaning for you at the time there?
At that time, we didn't have any, the kind of news, because Taliban, there was no television. The news that you got was from like the BBC Worldwide, like the radios and handheld radios. And I didn't know what the World Trade Center was and things like that. You know, I didn't see any images of it and that kind of thing. I only heard it from word of mouth because I couldn't afford one of those radios. A lot of my money was spent on footwear because the Afghan terrain was just to kill your footwear, kill it. You spend a lot of money on footwear. I didn't have that much money. And what September 11th meant was a lot of uncertainty. Because I didn't know the scope or the gravity of the whole thing. All I'm hearing is news from a few people telling you meet on the street and so forth. And it was just going to be that America was going to send some cruise missiles, a few cruise missiles, hit some houses, supposedly Osama bin Laden's or something like that. And then that'll be it, or it could be more than that. And for a whole month, there was this whole build-up that it's going to be a war, and you're hearing certain things, and you don't know whether to leave or whether to stay. So you kind of have the people that you're familiar with, and then all of a sudden it's just like they're going and finding their own way out and saving themselves, and then you're kind of just left to hang. And I really didn't know what to do, because I didn't have, when I went to the Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan, I meant to go and stay. And I hadn't made any plans to, any exit plans, or I didn't have that much money. My money was depleted, because the only money I had, I was using it the whole time. And so I had to remain. And then there's this whole build-up that there's possibly going to be an attack, and you don't know how long the attack's going to be, whether it's going to just be a few cruise missiles, or it's going to be a drawn-out war. I don't know. So yeah, so it was a whole uncertainty. And then there was this whole, we heard stories like in Kabul, the Northern Alliance, some Afghans there were upset that Masood was killed. And then September 11th was, I don't know whether they were upset or it was an opportunity, so they were killing Arabs in the market. So obviously I'm worried that I'm considered Arab, so I'm going to be next. I was in Kandahar, living in the Arabic institution where they taught Arabic, but they weren't teaching at that time. I tried to enroll, but they didn't have enough people, and so I was staying there, but there was nothing much going on in terms of education. So I remember one time leaving, I'm just stepping out of the compound, and then hearing a bang. So I look around to see where the bullet had hit, because obviously they missed, it didn't get me, but I was looking around to see where it hit, because I'm thinking, what's going on? Is someone shooting me? Then I hear another bang, and I'm looking around like frantic now, because I don't know which way to run. Is someone shooting at me? And I hear a bang, and then I look over, and across the other side of the road, it was something to scare the birds or something like that, etc. And I think there was an Afghan there who laughed because he saw me like looking like I was crazy, like that. But obviously you don't know what's going to happen. You don't know, you're just going to step out and someone's going to kill you. You just didn't know. So I decided, I'm going to have to not stay in Kandahar city. I'm just going to have to kind of go out. And with a group of other foreigners, we went out to the outskirts. And then we stayed on the outskirts of Kandahar, hiding, because we were kind of afraid that the Afghans will come for us. And then we're just hearing news that one city after another is falling. And that's the last news I heard was that Mullah Omar, the news I heard was Mullah Omar said that we're going to, the Taliban are going to pull back to Kandahar, and then and they're going to fight from Kandahar, and then reclaim the country, and then they're not going to give up Kandahar. And then the next thing I know is that okay, well basically I'm on the outskirts, and then I'm going to have to go through that story as well. So I'm on the outskirts of Kandahar, and then I'm with some foreigners, and then there was this thing, we were sleeping like rough, and then where I was sleeping, I think there were ticks one time, and then there was a snake, and then like there was some bombing around that area, and then there was a bomb that hit pretty close. There was an Afghan, I remember, on a bike who was kind of just riding out in that area, and it's kind of outskirts. So I'm wondering whether he's kind of doing recon for someone. And then, he's spotted us, like, the foreigners, and then that's why the bombs are hitting so close. So basically, I thought to myself, I'm not going to sleep here where the snake and the ticks or whatever, etc. I'm going to sleep in one of the bomb craters. So I thought it was safer to sleep in one of the bomb craters. So I told my friend, I said, I'm going to sleep over there, just in case, just so he knows where I'm sleeping. I'm not going to sleep where I normally sleep. So I slept in the bomb crater, and then I just remember like voices at night calling. I just remember seeing a kind of silhouette of someone at the edge of the bomb crater, but I didn't wake up. And then I wake up in the morning, and everyone had gone. I was on my own, like on the outskirts of Kandahar. So I thought, what's going on? Where's everyone gone? And they'd left in a rush because things were left. The sleeping bags were left. They were just there, just like they just picked up and went, like that. So basically, I pray my morning prayer, and then I pick up, I scavenge, and I find one of those handheld radios for BBC Worldwide. So I kind of turned it on, and the area was kind of broken, so I kind of shake it about a bit, and I hear outside of the white noise that Kandahar had fallen. So okay, so there's me, there's Mullah Omar, who said that we're going to come back to Kandahar, and we're going to fight from Kandahar and reclaim Afghanistan. And then there's this news that Kandahar had fallen. So basically I was in Northern Alliance territory.
And what were you thinking at the time?
Run. I think it was run. So that's what I did. So I just I had to get out away from that place, because there's sleeping bags all over the place. I don't know whether Northern Alliance was around. I didn't know what to do, so I just kind of I ran.
With any kind of aim in mind?
The thing is that there were some dates left, so I packed some dates and then in a bag, and then I was gonna rush just away from that area, but because we were in a dry riverbed, so I was gonna run across the dry riverbed. I heard voices, and then I climbed the side, the bank. I climbed the bank, and all I saw was a yellow turban. And I climbed a bit more, and then I saw this Afghan approaching. I didn't wait to see whether he had a gun or not, or whatever. I just turned and ran. And I ran down the riverbed, and as I was running, the thought in my head was going, he's going to shoot me in my back, he's going to shoot me in my back, he's going to shoot me in my back. I just kept on running, and I was thinking he's going to shoot me in the back, he's going to shoot me in the back, he's going to shoot me in the back. That's the only thought. I'm not breathing. So the dry riverbed kind of went straight and then turned around the corner, and I'm just thinking he's going to shoot me in the back, and I had to make that corner. And if I'm thinking he's going to shoot me in the back, he's going to shoot me in the back, he's going to shoot me in the back. And I was surprised I made it around the corner, but because I wasn't breathing, it didn't help. You know, I'm thin, so long distance running should be my thing. But when you're not breathing, then you're not going to get far. So I made it around the corner, and obviously I'm clamoring, so I just kind of just try to get away from that place as quickly as possible. And I got down the dry riverbed, I got over the top and went on the bank of the other side, and then I just hid in a kind of depression, and I remained there. And it was daylight. Afghanistan is open plain. You can see someone for a very long time, very far. And I'm not really going to get away. And if they decided to shoot me, I'm sure they could shoot me from a distance, because there's not many things you can hide. There's no trees and things like that. So I hid in the depression, and I stayed there the whole day, whole night. And then the morning came, and then I awake, and then I look, and in the distance, standing on some kind of big rock, there's an Afghan, a group of Afghans, and they've got a weapon. And they're shooting at some kind of set of houses. So obviously I'm thinking to myself, this is getting serious now, because before these Afghans shooting at this set of houses. So the thing was, I had to get away from that depression, down in the dry riverbed, and make my way the other way again. And then I hid out in some set of derelict houses, just mud houses, like on the side. I found something like to eat. I mean, I had I think a can of tuna on me, and then there was like 2 jam jars, small jam jars. One was broken. In that way, I knew there was a river in the distance away from Kandahar, so my priority was water. So I made my way there, and it's just you're making your way across open plain. And then I remember passing one Afghan. I saw him in the distance, and he saw me. Because the Afghans, they have this thing, they don't walk on paths, they just walk everywhere. So there's no way you can walk in the open, kind of, in the wilderness and not come across an Afghan. They're always there. So I don't know what's their problem, but that's it. So this guy had one of those big machine guns, belt machine gun. And he looked at me, he was in the distance, I looked at him, and I was just hoping he won't approach me. And for some reason he decided just to walk. He looked, and maybe he couldn't see me or something like that from that distance. He decided to walk, and then I walked away. So I managed to get to the dry river, not the dry river, but this is an actual river. It's the Red Sands. I've seen it on Google Earth. The Red Sands, very, very beautiful red sands, and there's a river that runs along them. And then I climbed up. You have to climb up in order to get to the top. I climbed up, and then I came across, now I'm thinking, okay, it's Ramadan, but I hadn't had any, okay, I'm thinking, okay, I think, yeah, I climbed up, and then I come across this Jan Muhammad or something like that, and then, try to talk to him, he tries to talk to me, etc. And he basically tells me if I follow the river, I'll go to Pakistan. So I thought, okay, that's good to know. And then I think there was someone else. Basically, I had to try to get. Okay, my memories of are kind of broken. I remember going across the red sands, walking across the red sands, and I think I went in a big circle. Because I walked the red sands, and I came to kind of, the edge of a mountain, and there was a town there, and I asked them for food, and then they gave me kind of some raisins, but they said it was Ramadan. You should be fasting, but I'm a traveler one, and I'm in a bad situation right now too. And I managed to come round, and then I think I ended up in the same kind of spot. So basically on the red sands, I found some kind of brush, and I hid there, and then I was there for 3 days. Yeah, 3 days. And I think I got sick because I was drinking the water, and I was confused because I was thinking, should I follow the river? You know, should I just? I didn't know what to do. I was just,
When did they find you? Did they find you?
oh yeah. Well, a family, an Afghan family. I guess Jan Muhammad went around talking, and you know, whoever. Maybe it was the same person with the yellow turban. After all, I don't know. But basically, the family of the Afghans, they found me. He sent his son, and then he was searching, and then he found me in that area, and then he took me to a town, to a small town on the edge, and then they look after me. They hid me because they said this Jan Muhammad was very interested in me. He wanted to relocate me again. And then they told me that there was a bounty on my head, $30,000. And that, you know, Jan Muhammad was very interested in this money, and he was looking for me. And he's going to be around that town, that village, looking to see where I am. So they hid me in some kind of derelict buildings and things like that. Gave me some medicine, because I think the water had affected me. Obviously they gave me food, etc. And then they said after Ramadan, they have 3 days of celebration, and then after those we'll leave, and then we'll go on a smuggler's route and go to Pakistan. That's what happened. We left. I left with the old man, didn't get far. A 4x4 pulled up, and it was full of Afghans with weapons. So one of them exits, and he walks up. The Afghan old man walks up to him and starts berating him, calling him mukhalifin, you know, the opposition, and giving him a good telling off. I couldn't understand what he was saying, but he was really giving him a good telling off. So the Afghan walks up to me, and then he says, Musliman, Musliman. Are you Muslim? I said, whoa, yes, I'm Muslim. And I said to him, Musliman, Musliman? And he said, yes, he's Muslim. Then he frisks me and takes my passport and etc. my money. And then he indicates, like, to me, I thought he indicated to go, like, to out to the open wilderness. So I was happy. I was thinking to myself, this guy, I mean, when he was talking to the old man, and I was watching the 4x4, I was looking in the distance, and I thought to myself, because, you know, I mean, in primary school and secondary school, at least early part of secondary school, I was a sprinter. You know, so I was thinking I could run that, you know, like, you know, just peg it, run. But then, you know, like, it's this open area. I could run for as long as I like, and then they'll just shoot you down. So that would be it. So he indicated go. So I thought, oh, excellent. So he's telling me just to go. So without my passport, whatever, my money, I was happy to just leave. But he said, no, come. You're going to the 4x4. So they put me in the 4x4, and then I'm in amongst them, and they're sitting there with their guns, etc. And then they say, oh, this is the interrogation. I guess that is the best they could do. They said, Zindabad Usama bin Laden. Zindabad means long live. So I said, Zindabad Taliban. Zindabad Mullah Omar. So I mean, long live Taliban, long live Mullah Omar. And so they were mukhalifin, but one of them was former Taliban, because they said, they indicated that he was former Taliban, but he'd switched sides, he'd turncoat, like that. So in the car, the 4x4, the old man's in the back, and then we drive, and then they put me in the back, and I think the old man went in the front, and then basically they took me to Spin Bulldog, which is on the border with Pakistan. Spin Bulldog, the old man left, and then he left me with them, and then they took me into a house, and I see a picture. They'd given me back my passport, I think, at this time, my money, and then I see a picture, and then they took it again, and I think it was Kharazai. I don't know, I hadn't seen houses with those pictures. There's just a picture in the center of the living room, and it's the kind of like Hosni Mubarak and whatever type pictures of presidents that they, you know, in Arab countries, like Gaddafi, you see this picture everywhere, or you did. Then, so I saw this picture, and then...
It's a picture of Karzai.
I believe it was Karzai, like that, so I'm thinking, okay. So they take the passport, they come back, and then in order to get into the car, I had to wear the blue woman thing, or whatever, which amused the kids, because they weren't fooled. So, that was that, so I got into the car, and then they took me to the border. And then basically they're watching the border. Now sometimes the Pakistani soldiers, they're not there, they don't scrutinize, so you can just drive across. But they were there, and they were checking every vehicle. So they pulled up to the side, and then we're looking, and obviously I'm thinking, they're not going to get me across. They're thinking the same thing, And then I believe we changed cars. We changed cars, and then I was put into another car, and then things got distinctively threatening. So the people that kind of changed over, some of the old ones stayed, the ones that got me in the first place, but some of the new ones, they kind of seemed a bit more cold. One of them was in the back, and he cocked his Kalashnikov near my head. And so I'm thinking to myself, okay, it doesn't look like it's going my way. I thought, they were going to help me, my Muslim brothers. And then we kind of drove back to Kandahar, and they said, as we were driving, they said, we're going to Herat. Herat is on the border with Iran, and Iran will take you, but Pakistan is not going to take you. So basically, morning became night, and we're driving through Kandahar, and I'm thinking they're going to fulfill their word, and then I start seeing that we're pulling up to roads where I'm seeing tanks, I'm seeing a lot of armed men, and this looks like kind of their area, their compound, their stronghold. So they take me there, and then the car just remains there. They exit, and then an Afghan that speaks English comes into the car. And then, now he was really kind of aggressive. He seemed to have kind of, he spoke English with an accent. I'd say maybe he spent some time in America, or he'd watch a lot of American movies, so I don't know. But he said to me something like, he said something like, we're going to hand you over to the British guys. The British guys do not want you, we're going to hand you over to the British guys. And then he just kind of he seemed angry, got out of the car, slammed the door, and that was that. So, okay, so they're going to hand me over to the British, I'm thinking. And I think at that time, they drove me back to Kandahar city. And it was a familiar sight because there's an arch. There's an arch in Kandahar. And when we used to catch the rickshaw, it used to go under the arch when you're going to the market. And but now there's no rickshaws, and there's not that bustle of a bazaar. It's just night, and it's quiet. And then underneath the arch, there's two Afghans, and they have their weapons. And then I'm sitting in the car, and then the original Afghan that frisked me and then took my passport, he's sitting there, and he's nervous about my hands. I don't know why. And then I think we were waiting, and I think we were waiting outside. This area is like Mullah Omar's. It used to be Mullah Omar's offices at that time. Oh, so basically, the Afghan, I said to him, I tried my best in Pashtun, that if the Americans enter Afghanistan, Islam will leave Afghanistan. So just be careful. If the Americans enter Afghanistan, Islam will leave Afghanistan. And then he indicated to go into the building. So basically, I entered the building. I'm tied up by those Afghans. Now the building is crawling with people with weapons. I'm taken into a room, and then the first time I see American soldiers, Marines, is then. They walk in with their M16s hanging off their necks, and then they speak to me in the American accent, and I'm looking at them, and I'm thinking, they're blonde-haired, blue-eyed. I hadn't seen that for a long time. And then basically they look at my papers, and they tell the Afghans to put me in the Afghan prison. I'm held in the Afghan prison for 2 days, 3 nights. And then from there, the Afghans take me out, and then I'm taken to a house. There was no furniture in the house, etc. And that's when I'm handed over to the Americans, Marines. And then they swap cars, and I'm taken on the back of a van, and then I'm driven to Kandahar Airport. And Kandahar Airport at that time was made into a detention center.
They fed you along the way and take care. How did they take care of you at all?
No, it was just a short. It was just a short ride. It's not far from Kandahar to Kandahar Airport, and part of the road is tarmacked. So once you hit that, I knew I was going to Kandahar Airport because of that. Because once you hit the tarmac in Kandahar, having driven such a small distance, then it must be going to Kandahar Airport. So basically, I was hooded and grip tied, and told to scoot back into a van, and then I was taken to the Kandahar airport, which has become the detention center. They threw me on the ground, frisked my sides. Then I was taken in. Obviously, I'm blindfolded at this point in time, so I'm going by hearing. I'm taken into into whatever facility they have for processing, and then I'm stripped naked. Anal search, pictures were taken, fully nude pictures, I'll add, because they were not found. Later on, a detainee in Guantánamo Bay was shown his pictures of myself. He told me he was fully nude. They were on the laptop of a military commissions lawyer that was defending him. So that's how I know. So these pictures were taken, and then I was taken into interrogation by the Marines. And then the Marines were only concerned with military intelligence information. I didn't have any to give them. And then the FBI interrogated me once, and then I was isolated, put in what is called the barn, because they thought I was British Special Air Forces, Special Air Services, SAS, Special Military Forces, etc. Don't know why they thought that, but they really believed it. And then I stayed in Kandahar for about 3 weeks. And then
What kinds of things did the FBI want to know?
just general stuff like background, same things I'm telling you. Yeah, that kind of thing. Just background, schools, jobs, how you got to Afghanistan, why you were there, what did you do when you were there, blah blah blah, etc. Yeah. So that's what they wanted to know. And then after 3 weeks, they told me that I'm going to go before military commissions or civilian court for conspiracy. Conspiracy to do what? They never said. And I think it was a Marine or one of these soldiers. He said that you're going to be shitting in a bucket on an island for the rest of your life. You're going to get life without parole. So okay, well, it's whatever. So basically, that's the prelude to Guantánamo. So we get processed in Kandahar, and then taken to Guantánamo Bay.
We've all seen the pictures of the arrival of the prisoners to Guantanamo. I wonder if you can go through that episode for us to describe in your own words that episode.
Okay. We arrive in Guantánamo.
I mean the whole trip over.
Okay, the trip over from Kandahar?
Yeah.
From Kandahar. Okay. The 3 weeks that I spent in Kandahar was in what was termed the barn. So I was considered some special detainee, I don't know why. And then after those 3 weeks, I was taken out and then taken for processing. And the only time I actually saw another detainee, except for the brief period when I was taken into the barn and I saw some detainees there, was during the processing. So there was someone before me, and then they were wearing the orange tight suit and other paraphernalia. And then it was my time for processing. So in Kandahar, they didn't give us a shower, nothing, no hygiene, etc. To go into graphic detail, what they do is they shave your head. I only had 6 hairs on my chin, and I thought, well, he's not going to shave my beard because there's nothing there. But he gave it one swipe, and then for some reason, then they dribble some liquid on your private parts. You're put in that suit, and then muffs that restrict thumb movement, handcuffs, eye goggles, earmuffs, and then I was taken out, and then I was put in front to lead one line of a set of detainees. I remember it was lunchtime because they gave us the half Afghan bread that the Red Cross had kind of sorted out for us, because before we were only getting 2 meals a day of MREs, that's meal ready to eat, so it's military kind of rations, and then ate that, and then we were taken out to the runway.
But your hands were tied. Did someone feed you?
No. You hold it.
Oh, yeah.
You just hold it, but you're sitting down and you move from the waist down and eat it. But you're wearing muffs, so you can kind of hold some things. But I mean, it's a big bread. It's a huge Afghan bread, so we manage. And then we're taken out to the runway, and then the military have this thing that they get ready for nothing. So they took us out in the day. The sun had gone down, and then we were put on the planes. Before they put us on the planes, they would test the handcuffs, meaning that it wasn't locked. So they would squeeze them so that, because there's a way of locking them so that they just don't keep on squeezing your wrists. Some people got it worse than others. They did it on purpose to cause pain, basically. They squeezed mine, but alhamdulillah, all praises due to Allah. It wasn't as tough as some other people. And then we were put on the plane, and then we're strapped in, and then the plane took off. The journey, I just remember being, as a Muslim, you have to take care of your prayers, and obviously in detention and being transferred and so forth, it becomes a worry. So I was worried about the prayer, so that was my concern. At the same time, that's what I remember of the journey. I remember we stopped off somewhere hot, and then we changed planes briefly, and then the flight took off. The soldiers, I think we got one small peanut butter sandwich and an apple, and the soldiers ate the rest. And the flight must have been 8 hours. I seem to recall 18 hours. Sorry, not 8 hours, 18 hours. And then I remember the pilot saying that we're going over such and such American city. I remember the city, but I don't remember the name of it. I don't know whether he was fooling, just making a joke or something like that. I remember one of the soldiers decided to give a hard time to the British guy, myself, and then he started berating the guy next to me. I didn't say anything. And then we landed in Guantánamo Bay, Cuba. I didn't know it was Guantánamo Bay. People will be taken out. Obviously, this is by sound. There's no images to these memories. This is by sound, and then the soldiers will stand either side of you, and then it's your turn to go down the ramp. And then they're saying things like, they're really effing, the Marines are really effing them up, and you can hear the shackles moving faster than they should do, which means that they're cutting at the ankles. You can hear people screaming, both saying F this and F that, F this, F that, and detainees screaming as well. You can just hear all you're doing by hearing, and then obviously I'm kind of getting tense now because it's my turn next. I'm going to go down the ramp, and then I'm going to get effed up. So they put me in the hands of the Marines, and then they lift you up and check one side, lift you on another side. You're frog marched from one set of hands to another, and then basically end up on the stress position. So they put us in a compound, and there's this famous Pentagon picture of they released of us in stress positions. If that is the first picture, I'm one of them. And then I was sitting in that stress position. So there's the hot sun, there's a face mask, these surgical masks in your face. The sweat is going to surgical masks, you can't breathe. There's the dog barking, there's someone barking, the soldier barking orders, and then the bad translation of Arabic. I'm just sitting there, you're in this stress position, you have to hold a position, your hands have to be in a certain place. So I can't breathe. And there was another reason as well, because I hadn't had a toothbrush for like 3 weeks in Kandahar, so my breath wasn't smelling that good with the face mask. So I was trying to remove it from my nose. So you just kind of move your mouth, that, and remove it from my nose, and then I'll try to breathe, and then the soldier will come back, shout at me, put it back, etc. And then this was the whole thing, and it went for hours. We got there when it was probably midday, and the sun had gone down, and I was still there. And I'm just hearing other detainees drop like flies, and then they get dragged away, and you can hear the chains. And I think I was the last one, and then basically they came. Before they did that, they took my sand off my foot, and then I don't know why they took the sand off my foot, and then they took me out, and they took me out into processing. And then you get a shower in front of full view of everyone. You're naked, and you only got like a few seconds, and then you go back and they put you in the jumpsuits, and then there's the anal search again. And then all I remember is, because with the goggles you could see a little bit underneath, like you could see your feet or you could see down. I just remember the light had changed. It was those floodlights that became very familiar. And I remember the clanking of the gates that were new sounds to me, but they'll become very familiar. And then I remember the grass, and then because of the floodlights, they're different color. It wasn't green, it was just kind of a different hue. And then I was put into my cage, and then they took off the goggles. And then my eyes took a while to readjust. I stood up and looked, and the first image I saw was an Afghan in orange, in a cage similar to mine, praying, which I later learned was in the wrong direction. And then I just, I looked around, and then that was it. I was in a cage, and my concern was to pray. I prayed as best as I could during that whole process, but I said, oh, let me repeat the prayers again. And then I was praying in the same direction as the Afghans, so I was praying in the wrong direction as well, but I didn't know which direction to pray. And then that's it. I'm in Camp X-Ray.
Before you got on the plane, had you been told you were being taken to Guantánamo Bay?
Well, no, not to Guantánamo Bay. I've been told I'll be going before military commissions or civilian courts, but I'll be shit in the bucket for the rest of my life, 100 years without parole.
And
Well, it was life without parole, yeah.
And did you have any idea what to expect before you arrived and walked down that plane?
No, not at all. I didn't even know Guantánamo Bay existed. Yeah. I didn't know. I mean, there's some reggae or something like that. Maybe I listened to it or whatever, but it mentions it in there, some of the lyrics. But I didn't know what Guantánamo Bay was, or it existed, or was a detention center or anything like that. So I'm put in an animal cage, and my first impressions were that this is quarantine, because what I expected was to go to America, and then I thought, they starved me in Kandahar, and then I'd spoken to Americans before, like before the whole Afghanistan thing, etc. And I heard inmates in America, they get swollen, they get big, they do weights to get big, so they must have food. So I thought to myself, in Kandahar, my only concern was food, because they were starving me to the point I became very, very thin. That I go to America, yeah, they might be put me before military commissions or civilian court, but I'll get food. So I'm there in Guantánamo Bay, Cuba, and then no, that didn't transpire. We didn't get swollen. So yeah, so that was it. So I'm in Camp X-Ray, and then Camp X-Ray was, I think I remember it as the first 3 days, not talking. Others remember it as 2 weeks. To me, the not talking thing, you just sit in the middle of your cell, whether you're in the sun or not didn't matter. You had two places to look. You had to look up to the sky, at the ground. The soldier's job was to see whether you're looking in any other direction other than these, and then come to shout at you. That was it. But for me, those 3 days, to me, I remember them as 3 days. It was kind of like I could catch up, because all of this had happened and my mind wasn't keeping up with it. It wasn't keeping up with it. So there was a kind of moment where I could stop and then start to take it in. And it was during those 3 days. Then we were allowed to talk to the guy next to you and that kind of thing. And then
So what were you thinking in those 3 days?
quarantine. I was in quarantine, like animals, when they won't allow them into the country, then they need to put them in quarantine, check whether they've got diseases and stuff like that, and then we're going to go to America. That's what I thought. So I started sitting, you had the kind of ISO mats, they called them, these camping mats, and I sat down on, I wouldn't sit on the ISO mat. This is after they allow you to kind of have slight freedom in your cage. I'd sit on the rough floor because, the Marines, they give you a beating, like when they make you sit cross-legged in the truck, and then they tie you down, bolt you down, and then if you move from that position, and they give you a kicking and etc. So I said, I'm going to toughen up my legs. Yeah. I'm going to sit on the rough floor, the concrete floor, and toughen up my legs. When the Marines come, then I'll be able to take it, their beating, because we're going to go to America. So it never happened, but it's a good thing it didn't happen. It's a good thing it didn't happen.
When you first were allowed to talk to each other, what are the kinds of things you said to one another?
Okay, because my Arabic is not that good, so it's very rudimentary. So I'm there and I'm trying to understand what they're talking about, and most of it goes over my head. So they were talking about Dhul Qaeda, the Islamic month. I thought they were talking about Al-Qaeda. So I said, don't talk about that. You don't know where you are? Don't talk about that. What are you talking about? They said, no, it's the Islamic month, Dhul Qaeda, because they were talking about it. And then one time they were talking about, they said, Faraj Karib. This is the first time I'm hearing Faraj Karib. I later heard it all the time. And for some reason, I thought that I had this idea that the word farar was to flee. So I thought they were talking about escape. So yeah, so I kind of shuffle over to the guy next to me and said, so what's the plan? But no, he said, no, we're just, faraj kri means that you will be released soon. So it was a hope that you will be released soon through the proper administration of the US government. They'll release you soon. I thought they were talking about escape, so, anyway, that was that, they weren't. And then, just generally, I guess the topic of the day was what was happening in the camps, the latest news, and what so-and-so was told in interrogation, and what hopes people had to be released.
They were mostly Afghans?
Arabs, and then a
Arabs.
mix of Afghans, yeah.
When did the interrogations begin?
Interrogations began 1 month later, so we were taken in January 11th, and February they began. And then it was they're going to start a whole clean slate. Everything you said beforehand is not going to be taken into consideration. Let's start your story again. Okay, we have to go through this whole thing again. And then it's either military is interrogating you or the FBI, and then they saw which one you kind of didn't like. I didn't like the Marines because of the way they treated us, and I hated them, so I wasn't in the military interrogations. I was clammed up. The FBI then they decided, okay, they're gonna, I'm more conducive. There's more rapport with the civilians. So then they dominated the interrogations. But there was some military in general. Yeah.
What kind of questions do they ask you?
Start from the beginning. Everything.
Everything.
Yeah. Everything. Same thing I'm telling you guys. That's what I said. So they go through all of them. And that's it.
Did you feel that they were searching for particular kinds of information?
No, they didn't know who we are. I quickly learned, coming from the West, I knew that, you call them Miranda rights or something like that. Yeah. Here, you have to be read your rights, and they do not know where I came from. They don't know. The Afghans just gave them, and in fact, the Afghans who who handed me over lied. They said I was found loitering after curfew in Kandahar city. That's not reality. They found me on the outskirts of Kandahar in the morning after curfew. They lied. They lied to them. So the U.S. Administration did not know who they have. They didn't know our names. They didn't know anything about us. I mean, they had my passport and things like that, so they knew that, etc. But they didn't know anything. So starting from that, how can you build up a case against someone if you don't know where they've come from, who they are, what they were doing? You just got handed over for money, and the Afghans can say, or the Pakistanis can say whatever they like about them. So I really learned. So I thought to myself from the beginning, this is they're gonna frame me. They're gonna make up something, and then I'm gonna be in prison for the rest of my life, because they don't know. They haven't read me my rights, and they don't know where I've been or what I've been doing, etc. Well, how can they know? So I really believed they were going to frame me, and I worked towards it. I said, I'm going to be there for the rest of my life, and I'm just going to have to do with what I can there, and just live my life. And then I really believed that up until the end. I really believed it.
So what kinds of things did you decide to do to make do?
Okay, you had two types of detainees in Guantánamo Bay. I know it's cliched. You had the ones that hoped for release, and you had the ones that kind of didn't hope for release and got on with their life. So, I just tried to read what I could. I had the Quran. I tried to improve myself in that way. You do your best. It's mainly reading and trying to improve yourself with whatever books in that way. There's always the whole survival aspect, and then you try to, as a Muslim, you try to better yourself in terms of your worship and things like that. So that's what I tried to do, but I didn't have any hope that I would be released. I was determined they were going to frame me. I'm going to make up lies about me, this and that and the other, etc. And then I was going to remain there forever.
When was the first time that you had some kind of interaction or message or intended engagement with a lawyer or even a military representative? Oh,
that's a long time. That's skipping far. Anyway, so Camp X-Ray, so I'm in Camp X-Ray, and then I think it was March 2002, they moved us to Camp Delta. And unfortunately the Arabs, they believed that, oh, this is it. They'd made a mistake and now they're going to take us home. You know, one of the detainees there, he'd been talking to interrogators, and the interrogators had told him, you know, there's a new permanent prison, etc., Camp Delta, that's where you're going. So I believe that more likely than the hopes of the Arabs. I tried to tell them, they didn't want to hear it. And then we got transferred. It's the same, the Marines, they came, and then, you know, you get the battering and kicked and punched, and as you've been taken to on the bus to Camp Delta. And there I was, I see Camp Delta, Charlie block. I was Charlie 1.
The kicking and the punching was a regular kind of part of the imprisonment?
Well, it's the transfer. When you're being transferred to Marines. The Marines don't actually deal with you on a day-to-day basis at that time. It was the kind of the military. Some were reserve, some were National Guard, some were full-time military. They dealt with you on a day-to-day basis. But the Marines were there, I think, for security. So they'll deal with the transfer, and then obviously they'll give you kicking and a punching, etc. Then there's the Earth team. When they say that you're contravening some rule or other, they'll come in with riot gear, and then they'll knock you down and beat you up sometimes, and then take you out into isolation, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Did that happen to you?
Earth? No.
No.
I wasn't Earthed. Alhamdulillah. Yeah.
Did you have any concerns of how anyone would know that where you were? Anybody in the whole of the world would ever know?
In Kandahar, the ICRC came, and then I said to them, they asked whether I wanted to send a message to my family. I said, yeah, I wrote a message. They asked whether the consulate wanted to be informed. Obviously, at that time, I thought the Afghans had told the consulate already, because that's what the Afghans said. But I said, yeah, you know, inform the consulate, British consulate. And then in Camp X-Ray, I think after a month, supposedly, they claimed to be consular officials. They came and then, you know, they talked to me. So it was obvious that, you know, some people knew I was there. And then I think during Camp X-Ray, I got a message from my mother through the Red Cross, I think, or maybe the US mailing system. It's either then or I wrote a message. But yeah, I was aware that people knew that I was there.
What was Camp Delta like?
Okay, I was detained in Camp X-Ray, Camp Delta, Camp Echo, and the trend is that I preferred Camp X-Ray, and then it just got worse as you went by. The thing about Camp X-Ray was more informal, so the soldiers, I mean, they could be mean to you. I remember one soldier called Phillips, he took a dislike to me, and then he told me one time that this is in Camp X-Ray, that me and him are going to go round and round one day or something like that. Yeah, I mean, I think it was from the south or something like that. And then one time he took the keys and he was rushing to my door because he was going to open it and have a fight with me or something like that, etc. So there was more informal, but you get some other guards who are better, like who are kind of nicer, because they didn't really know what to do in that situation. But as you go over time and you go over camps, they became more cold, more systematic in their ways. The cells in Camp X-Ray, the mesh that they were using was the same that you find in parks, the green kind of fencing. In Camp Delta, there was more metal and less to see through, and in Camp Echo it even got worse and things like that. So things just became more isolated, more alienating over the camps. Camp Echo to me was, as long as the only problem was the soldiers bothering you. If they harassed you, then you have a problem. Other than that, I just kind of, it would be sunny. You'd feel the wind because you were near the ocean. You'd hear the chime of the razor wire. I just get on with my reading, and so maybe some note taking and things like that. And I like the kind of hearing the Arab brothers in the background just speaking. I didn't understand what they were saying, but that kind of just hearing them in the background, it was nice. I would keep myself to myself and keep quiet, but I like the actual connection. I don't know, it's just like a feeling that maybe you have tentacles that reach out, and you can the whole block, you can feel the energy of the block, and then you can hear those it was nice, apart from the being taken into interrogation. But the interrogators thought interrogation was a bonus. As they put it, you get to leave that shithole. But I'd prefer the, excuse me, shithole rather than the interrogation itself, because I had freedom to walk around in my cell rather than being bolted to the ground. And you tell me the interrogation was better. But like that, so it was okay. And then, but then they took me to Camp Echo. So.
They kept interrogating you again and again. What more could you tell after you told the story?
Okay, now the thing was, I got the impression that there's a disjuncture between what's happening in Guantánamo Bay and what Washington is being told. Because what they were concerned about, the interrogators, they weren't concerned about your story anymore. You told your story, they have it on record, finished. They weren't concerned about the story anymore. What they're concerned about is you talking. So if you talk about cricket or football, whatever, that was the only concern, that you talk. And to my feeling was they can say that this guy's talking, so they can send a report to Washington and say, oh, so many people are talking. If you didn't talk, they got nasty. They got nasty. And they started, if you said, I have the right to remain silent, I've told you my story, you guys are a bunch of jokers, I have nothing more to say, I want my lawyer, they get nasty. They start really messing you up. And there was a period of time when power was given to the interrogators before, like your comfort items, they call them, medical treatment, letters home was given to interrogators, and if you wanted to write a letter home, you had to go to the interrogator, because they said you're going to have to talk to them. You can't just clam up and not say you don't want to talk to them, you have to talk. Didn't matter what you're talking about, you had to talk. And then medical treatment, you had to go through the interrogators. And that's where it got really harsh. They were really handling people, really severely.
Did they try to talk to you about football and cricket?
Yeah. I mean, but the thing was that every time I opened my mouth to say something, they'll use it against you. So, for instance, they asked me about, what was your last job? So I said, macros. I was a wholesaler. Because I knew, like, I've watched enough American movies and things like that. I said I was a general assistant. I stacked shelves. Yeah, I've watched enough American movies to use the terminology. So the allegation, they don't, because thinking back, I think to myself, did they ever ask me in interrogation, are you Al-Qaeda? I can't remember them asking me. It was always by implication that they'll take what you said and then it indicates that you were Al-Qaeda, but they'll never ask you directly. So I said to them, I was a general assistant, I stacked shelves. Later I learned, because on the blocks there was a green book where they keep daily log of what happened, whether there was a riot, who got food, etc. In there there's the allegations. The soldier comes and tells me the allegation is I'm assistant general. I'm not lying, I'm assistant general. I was assistant general in Afghanistan. I was like, whatever. I said, where did this come from? But it came from the interrogation. So because I said I was a general assistant, I stacked shelves, they twisted it around and said he's assistant general. Then later, another time, I said, what did you do at home? I said, I got into some baking. I like bread, so I decided to do my own bread in my mum's kitchen. There was a period of time when I decided to go do baking. The allegation is explosive expert like Steven Seagal. I'm not lying. This is what the soldier comes and tells me on the block. Explosive expert like Steven Seagal. Because one of the, I like my martial arts movies. One of them, Steven Seagal, is like a cook. He was demoted and he's on a ship, and then I think he blows up the microwave or something like that, because I don't know whether the ship's attacked or something, and he's the only one who can save it, whatever. Steven Seagal, like that. So this is the allegation, and then and another time, this is in Camp Echo. So out of the blue, the soldier says, like, he's been watching, I don't know, CSI. I don't know about CSI, whatever, just crime scene, whatever, movies, investigation or something. And he said that, the murder, if the blood goes in the wall and you wash it off, they can shine a light on it and it will show up. So you're not going to watch out, because all those massacres you did in Afghanistan, you're going to get your day. I think, well, where did this come from, these massacres in Afghanistan? Where did this come from? The interrogators, their job wasn't to, work out whether you're a terrorist or not. It was to prove that you were a terrorist, whether you were a terrorist or not. That was it. So whatever you said, they'll twist it, and it only proved to me that they're gonna frame me. But what I didn't understand was, why didn't they just lie? It seemed like they were covering their own backsides. They didn't want to lie, but at the same time, they wanted you to implicate yourself from your words. So they would do silly things. Like, for instance, I remember one time I said, because I think the conversation came across on because they always thought that, you know, the blocks when you're at Camp Delta, it was a shithole. One interrogator kept on referring to it as a shithole all the time, you know, and then like, you know, he thought it was really bad, although he didn't understand that interrogation was worse than the shithole. I came around to the conversation. I said to him, you know, look, I think one time I said to him, this is not the worst that I've had in life, you know, like. The worst was when I was like a teenager, you know. This is not the worst time in my life, you know. And I still believe that, you know, because at the end of my teenage years, I attempted suicide. But in Guantánamo Bay, that wasn't the case. You know, it was like, you know, it was a hard time, it was a difficult time, but you persevere. So, you know, my teenage years were worse than Guantánamo. And the interrogator was kind of obviously shocked, but he said, why? I just said, oh, because maybe the testosterone or something like that, you know. I didn't want to go into too much detail. But I really believe they used that against me. They really used that against me. They took me to Camp Echo, and then, this is, okay, Camp Delta. If I just okay, should I come on to the Camp Echo bit? Because, yeah. Okay, Camp Echo, how to put it? Okay, I'd stopped talking to interrogators.
Sorry, how long had you been in Guantanamo at this point?
Year anniversary. I remember having my year. I spent my year anniversary in, I was in isolation. I was put in we called it Infiradi, the MSU, Maximum Security Unit. It's for punishment. They knew they weren't supposed to touch the Quran, and then like they took someone to recreation, and the senior soldier came and started frisking through the Quran with a towel. I was in the same block. When the news got to me that he was doing that, so I started shouting in English. Then the riot happened. The detainees started kicking and throwing stuff and, you know, making a big fuss about it. I was calling them Nazis, and then basically then we were taken to for punishment in the MSU, Maximum Security Unit. So I was taken there, and basically I spent my year anniversary in isolation. So, which was kind of okay. But basically March 2003, March 2003, one interrogator, he said his name was Highlander, and he said he was Scottish. He's American, but Scottish origin. And he basically said that you're going up to for the military commissions. I'd stopped talking to interrogators. I wasn't saying anything to them, clammed up. I wasn't going to say anything at all. He asked me whether I had any questions. I didn't, and they took me back to the blocks. Then I think maybe a few days later, I'm taken out of the block and I'm taken on a medical vehicle. And the strange thing is I'm taken out of Guantánamo, and I'm driven to a town in Guantánamo, but I'm driven there. And then I'm taken to a hospital, and I'm seeing proper streets and stuff like that. And then, but there was a cabin like near the hospital, and then they give me a CT scan. So then I'm taken back to Guantánamo, taken back to the same block, and then a few days after that they come for me, and then the same kind of vehicle. So I thought, well, maybe it's because in Camp X-ray the TB had registered positive, but the reason why is because we have immunization injection here called BCG. You have them when you're a teenager, and any test would register positive. But it doesn't mean that you have it. You've been immunized against it, so it registers. So I thought maybe that was it. I was always worried about the TB. Maybe it's latent and it's become active now in my lungs or something like that. So they take me into that vehicle, and I'm thinking, okay, this is a medical trip. And then they take me to Camp Echo, and Camp Echo was very strange situation. And when they took me, it's strange, but I think it was the same night Iraq was bombed. The beginning of the Iraq War. I don't understand why, but that's what they did. So they take me, and Camp Echo, it's a normal cell, but one, in an extended building without windows. And then there's a section for the detainee, separated, and there's a section for the soldiers, and then they stay there 24/7 watching you. And literally, before they would sit near the cage and they just watch you. And in the green book, they would write everything you did, minute by minute. And I know this because the soldiers later, they transferred, they changed soldiers and so forth. The soldiers read those books, and they told me that, you know, everything from detainee stands up, detainee sits down, detainee sleeps, detainee gets up, detainee picks up pen, or things like that, and they'll just scrutinize you. and then there. But within 2 weeks of getting there, they gave me an immunization shot. And then within 2 weeks of that, there's a growth on my right testicle. And I started getting worried. And it just, this is very strange. And because I got an inkling from the interrogations that they'll use what you said against you, I think that when I said, oh yeah, because of the testosterone, they decided, okay, this is going to crack this guy. This is going to crack this guy. So they use medical treatment. I really believe this. They gave me injections. People don't really believe it, but new information is coming out every so often. And then they gave me the injections. And then after a month, during that period of time, they were taking my blood pressure, my heart rate, etc., those tests, every day, and sometimes twice a day. And I thought to myself, what's going on? In Camp Delta, I'd made an effort, and I really tried to stay away from medical treatment, because I knew that once they get you there, then they have leverage over you if you need medical treatment. But now I'm just getting medical attention every day, and it's unwanted. So I'm worried that they're spiting my milk or something like that, or my food, because now they have control of my environment. On the block, it's mass, so they can't really control your environment. But here, I'm just a single detainee in a single cage. And then after a month, I started getting panic attacks. So I just feel that someone's attacking me, and I'd wake up, scream, I'd fight something off. I just and it was a disjuncture. Like, for instance, I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing? There's thoughts in my head that are not my own. There's emotions that I'm feeling that are not my own. I can just feel a separation in everything. My bodily movements, I'm defending myself from an assailant that I can't see. I'm thinking to myself, what am I doing? But at the same time, physically, I'm defending myself against that assailant. So there's a whole disjuncture with my whole being, whether mental, whether physical, whether emotional. There's me, and then there's other than me, and it's all one. And this is happening. And basically, I crack. And then I wasn't speaking to interrogators. They got the earth gear because the doctor, the strange thing with the doctor was she came every day and then she kind of got disillusioned. And then one of the soldiers, because I tried to play it down, that nothing was happening with me, because I thought, oh, they're going to finish me off. It looks like they're not going to frame me. They're just going to give me another injection, send me crazy, and then say, oh, he went crazy. He couldn't handle it. It cracked. What can you do? That was what they were going to do, because they had no way out from this situation. They weren't going to say sorry. So I was keeping it toned down with the doctor, but one of the soldiers went and blabbed, and then the doctor comes running back saying, oh, you have immunization shots. I said, this is like a month later. Immunization shots, you got like every 6 months or so. And then, so I was thinking it's strange that she came, she spoke to me, she didn't say anything, she went. But when the soldier told her about the panic attacks, then she comes running back. So I'm thinking, this is it, they're going to finish me off or something like that. So she comes with immunization shots, not the next day like she said. She comes the same night. She tells me that, oh, there's such and such hepatitis A, hepatitis B, or whatever. I say no. Then a male doctor comes the next day. He tells me another thing. It's not hepatitis A, hepatitis B, whatever. It's something else. So I'm thinking, why can't they keep their story straight? Because of these immunization shots. So I refused, and they were going to earth me. And then basically I cracked. I called in the interrogators. That was my only way out. And that's the only time I ever really cracked, as it were. And that's what they did to me. So I said, I want to go home. And that's the only time I asked them that I want to go home. Because before that, I asked them, I would say to them, put me before a trial. Give me my day in court. If you say I'm this and that and the other, give me my day in court. But that's the only time I cracked. And then basically I called in the interrogators. The interrogator arranged the immunization shots. And then I'm kind of okay. After the shots, I'm kind of fine. I mean, there was some issues, residue, but I was kind of okay. And then I was there because one interrogator said he promised me a year ago that I would be out of Guantánamo. This is a promise come true. I don't remember the promise. I didn't care for the promise anyway, because they lie to you anyway. And he said that I was there for the military commissions. I was going to be the first one to go up for military commissions, and that's what I was there for.
How far along in the process toward the military commission did you go?
I don't know. They just threatened me with the military commissions for I mean, I was in Camp Echo for about 2 years,
Oh.
solitary. So that the threat of military commissions was there for the whole time.
And it never happened?
No, never happened. At the end of it, they just dropped the thing. They dropped the thing, and then that's it. So I spent 2 years in solitary, and then in
What was that like?
it's hell.
We can move on to something else.
Yeah. So in 2004, I think summer, can't remember the month, then surprise, surprise, I get a lawyer. It's,
They told you you were going to get a lawyer?
I think I got a lawyer from, I got a letter from Gita. I think I got a letter first or something like that. I can't remember the process, but I didn't believe it because, you know, they're always pretending. You hear stories of them pretending to be whatever. So, I mean, there's stories that they're pretending to be the ICRC, stories of pretending to be, you know, there's stories that some military, soldiers will pretend, interrogators will pretend to be the FBI, which the FBI didn't like at all, because then the military would do bad things, and then the FBI said that, you know, they'll end up holding the bag, because they weren't happy. There was friction between the FBI and the other interrogators as well. So you didn't believe anything they said. So I didn't believe it, and then but until I saw Gita, and then she came, and then she was my lawyer. She came to visit me in Camp Echo. Yeah. So
What was your first impression of Gita?
I wasn't going to get excited, because I thought to myself, you know, is it real or not, like that, you know? So just, you know, like, you just play it cool. Yeah, but it kind of worked out. So it opened a door for me. I thought to myself, you know, at that time there was the CSRTs, the Combatant Status Review Tribunals, which I was preparing for, and also there's the habeas corpus, and I think that's the first time I ever heard habeas corpus, and Gita explained it to me, and that what was happening there. I mean, I could write letters, confidential attorney-client letters and things like that. So I felt that was a real opening, but I thought to myself, it's not going to last long. But it was progress where, you know, for years you just don't see any change. Yeah.
I've interviewed a number of lawyers who talk about their feeling that they were kind of a window on the rest of the world. I wonder if we can get that from your point, the way you saw them.
Yeah. To me, yeah, Gita was an opening, and I could write my, you know, I could write what's happened to me and send it as a attorney-client. It was like I could have my story out before they closed that door, because I really believe they'll close that door. And, you know, I wrote a big document of abuse, just detailing what happened to me, and I sent it to her because I felt, you know, let me do this now, because they're just going to change the rules, and then she's not going to be allowed, and no lawyers are going to be allowed to in Guantanamo. So this is my opportunity, and, you know, it did make a difference to know that, you know, that everyone you meet other than another detainee is not against you. It made a lot of difference, and it you know, some of the news you got, because in Guantanamo, especially in Camp Echo, I felt that we've forgotten. No one cares about us, and that's the impression they wanted you to have. And, you know, it's good that, you know, Gita would bring some news in a way. I mean, she wasn't allowed to bring too much, I don't think, etc. But you got some inkling, some suggestion that, you know, you weren't forgotten. Yeah.
And then what happened after these meetings with Gita?
Well, Gita left, and then I had to prepare for the CSRT, and then we had the CSRT, and then...
What did they tell you the CSRT was going to be?
Huh? Oh.
What did they say it was going to be?
Oh, they said you're an enemy combatant, and you have to prove you're not. That's it. And then you have someone to represent you, but they're not really on your side. So if you tell them anything, then could be used against you, because they have to reveal it. So it's like, okay. Like, yeah, whatever. So, I mean, I prepared. I was getting legal briefs from Gita. She left some. So I decided to use that as the template. And I was walking my cell, memorizing, because I knew they were going to take my papers away from me. they're going to do something like that. So I'd walk my cell, I'd try to memorize it, so if they did, I could say it off rote. So it gave me something to do. So I was defending myself now, legally. I was mounting my own case and strategizing. And then, so from there, they took me back to population, Camp Delta, and then we weren't wearing the orange, we were wearing the beige. I was amongst the few detainees that were going up for military commissions. And then...
What if we stick for a few moments on the testimony for the CSRT, because it's all over the web. It's been reproduced a number of times, beginning with Malcolm X.
Oh yeah. So it was both an admonition to whoever was going to give me the CSRT, because I didn't know. I knew there was a tribunal or something. So the thing is, you have to present Islam to people for two reasons. One, maybe they'll see the light and then they'll become Muslim. Another, because Allah won't punish anyone until they've received the message. So I thought, if this guy's going to do me over, which I expect, let me kind of present Islam to him, and then he'll do me over now, but later on he'll get done over by Allah. So there was that one, and then there was obviously the stuff about international law and the arguments that my lawyers are putting forward in the habeas corpus, which I incorporated into there, and
What was their response to your testimony?
Oh, well, whatever rank he was, he didn't want to hear about international law. And that kind of threw me, because I thought they were going to take my papers, but they didn't. So all I could do was just keep on going with my narrative, which I had before me. And he kept on mentioning international law. So he said, if you mention international law again, you're going to get thrown out. So I got thrown out. That was that, yeah.
Did you have conversations with some of the other detainees about the CSRTs?
The CSRT happened when I was in Camp Echo, so you couldn't even see another detainee. Yeah. Then I think when we were taken back to the population in Camp Delta, that's the first time I see Mozambique. But he'd been my companion in Camp Echo the whole time, but I hadn't seen him. I only hear him and hear of him. And sometimes we swapped letters. If the soldier was being nice, he would swap letters, but I'd never seen him. And then, so we had conversations in Camp Delta, and we must have broached the subject. Yeah, we did, because he was telling me he didn't get involved, but I told him I did, and we went through all of that.
The next step, I guess, is finding out that you will be released.
Okay, that whole thing, yeah. Up to the flight.
No, well, I mean,
what happened after the CSRT?
Who told you what was going to happen next?
Okay, I'm in Camp Delta. I'm wearing beige now because military commissions, you wear a different color. And for 2 years now, I've been threatened with the military commissions. I'm going to be going forth with military commissions. There was suggestion of the death penalty and so forth. The first person that told me that I might be going home was, funnily enough, another detainee, Ali Bahlul, Yemeni detainee. He got life in the military commissions. So it's supposedly Al-Qaeda's media guy. But the thing was, it was because we got measured up. They took us out of our cells, and strangely enough, they didn't take us out with our shackles. Just took you out in front of the cell, and then they measure you up with a tape measure. Me and Mozambique. So I thought, oh, this is for a suit, because I heard one of the other detainees was wearing a suit to his military commissions or something like that. So you have to wear a suit. So I guess it's for the suit. And then, but Ali Bahlul, he'd seen the other British detainees how the process, and he said, no, you're going home. So I said, come on, man, I'm not going home. Then I think some time goes by. I can't remember how much time. And then we're just taken out. We're taken out of there, as they normally do, because sometimes they just move you for the sake of moving you. And they took my stuff, and then me and Mozam were taken out. So I thought, this is being taken to another block or something like that, etc. But Ali Bahlul and the others were saying goodbye, remember us, write to us, that kind of thing, etc. And I'm thinking, you guys are joking, we're not going home. Okay, I'm taken back to Camp Echo, in one of the blocks that I'd been taken to before. And then a soldier comes, and then he reads out a statement saying that you're going home. Any allegations against you, whether there were any allegations, have been dropped. And then he walks off. I didn't believe him, because they do this all the time, and I wasn't going to believe it. Then I think I'm waiting for a lawyer's visit. I can't remember. For some reason, I'm taken out of my cage and I'm bolted down, like normally for a lawyer's visit or something like that, in a similar block. And then Clive Stafford Smith, he does it. He was doing this thing that, you know, he'll pretend that he didn't know which block to go to. He's come to visit a client, and then he'll go into the wrong room. So he ends up in my room, and he kind of walks in, and then he's very tall, and he looks at me, and then he kind of doesn't register who I am, and then he sits down and tries to talk to me. So I talk to him back in English, and then he realized, oh, it's you, Abbasi. So I said, yeah, and he said, oh, the news is true. Yeah, you're going home. So I thought, okay, all right. Oh, now this is getting interesting, yeah, because it's coming from someone other than, you know, the administration.
And this was the first time you met Clive?
Yeah, this is the first time. He's kind of pretending he went into the wrong room, and then so he said, "Oh, I gotta go," and he ducked out. And so I thought, okay, yeah, that's great. I think Geeta told me. I can't remember whether Geeta. Maybe I was waiting for Geeta, but maybe she said, but I can't remember. And then that's it. So you're thinking to yourself, you're going home, but I'm thinking to myself, you know, is it true or not? You know, you don't. Our thing was they'll tell you you're going home, you're going home, you're going home, which is a bad sign because it means they're going to screw you over. And then until I see it, until I have my foot on UK jurisdiction, then I'm not going to believe it. And then they came, and then the FBI took fingerprints, and you know, and then they changed our clothes. I have always had this image that, you know, you daydream, if I come off the plane, I'm going to come off in orange, and my hair's going to be disheveled, and my eyes are going to be wild, and I'm just going to look like I'm really, really messed up. Yeah, that's going to be iconic. But they wouldn't let me keep the orange suit, so I had to wear the kind of the jeans type of stuff that they sent us, and then we're taken out from there onto a bus. This time it's not the Marines. I think, yeah, it had seats, which is strange. And then we were bolted, and then there we were taken out of Guantánamo Bay. We crossed the river, I think, and then we're taken to the runway.
And there was a plane? Yeah,
there was a plane. And the strange thing was a British Metropolitan Police, I think, they came on board the bus. It was a familiar sight, but very strange in Guantánamo Bay. You know, so there's a whole mix. There's the Guantánamo Bay detainees, there's the soldiers, and there's British Metropolitan Police there, and it's weird.
And
the Tipton Three had already been.
They had been released.
And you had known about that, their release?
Yeah, because I was told about it. The consular official came with the news, hoping that I'd break down and cry again in front of him, I guess, because he said it with some kind of stifled glee. And he asked me what do I think about that. He put it to me as, you know, some people are going to be released, UK nationals, but it's not you. And then, you know, what do you think about that? Obviously, I was happy because it was good news that at least some movement was happening, although it wasn't me. It kind of cracked the Guantánamo Bay as a place that you can't leave, especially for UK nationals. So it was good news for me. But yeah, I knew they'd left, and I think Tariq, I knew he'd left as well. Yeah.
And David Hicks?
No, he was still there.
He was still there?
He was still there, yeah.
And with you on the bus, was Mozam with you? Who was on the bus?
It was Mozambique, Martin Mubanga, Jamal Harith, Jamal Belma.
And what were you saying to each other at the time?
You're cracking jokes. Mozambique and Martin started talking in the Jamaican dialect because they had a translator there who was listening. First of all, we switched into Arabic to talk to each other, and then we clocked on one of them was a translator who picked up Arabic. So Martin and Mozambique switched into kind of Jamaican English dialect, and then he tried to speak to me, but I don't understand it, so I couldn't get into the conversation. And you're just cracking jokes, like it was weird. But at the same time, you're reserved because you know that you've got the police there, Metropolitan Police, and you don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to arrest you when you land, whatever? What are they doing there? So you're kind of reserved in a way, anxious.
I wonder if we can start this session by talking about the homecoming, and getting off the plane to coming home. Was it coming home?
Okay. Well, we're still on a plane, and the plane lands in England, UK, and then I hadn't been arrested before in the UK or anywhere. You can't. I mean, unless you call Guantánamo Bay and that being arrested, but I hadn't been arrested. So basically, I'm arrested as the plane lands, and I'm told whatever. I could hardly hear what the woman was saying over the engine, the roar of the engine and so forth. But I'm arrested for some terrorism charge or whatever, etc. It was obviously my worst fear because I didn't want to come back in and face prison here as well. And then we're taken to Paddington Green Police Station. The questioning was stupid. The best questioning they had was they said, such and such newspaper said you did such and such and you were involved in such and such and blah, blah, blah. Is that true, Mr. Abbasi? I had to answer no comment because that's what my lawyer said. And then that was it. So 3 newspapers and then that was it. So it was kind of just routine. And then we'll put him in the back of a police van, and then we were taken out. And then I can't remember. I think we ended up in another car with my lawyer. And then, but it wasn't a homecoming because I looked out of the window, and it was night, and I could see those amber lights, and then the black taxis that I'm used to, and the concrete, and the familiar image that I hadn't seen for years, but it was familiar, and it was raining, and I was depressed. I was really depressed. Yeah, I kind of daydreamed sometimes in Guantánamo that they would just dump me in my orange suit in Afghanistan somewhere, out in the wilderness, and I would just run. It was a hope, not realistic, but that's what I hoped, and it brought me back here.
To your family?
Yeah, I mean, I saw my family. It was good to see my family, but twice I've left this place, and I thought I made sure that I wouldn't come back, and unfortunately I'm still back here.
And then, so what did you do in the weeks, the months after you came back?
Well, the thing was, you can't. I had to hit the ground running because I didn't want to stop. I didn't want to reflect on what was happening. I mean, in Guantánamo Bay, you're in survival mode. You're, going day by day, surviving and looking for any which way to survive and better your chances of doing so. Coming here, it's like all of that could threaten taking you over. You could get engulfed in the whole what's happened to you. I mean, in Guantánamo, and you didn't have time to process it. You were in it, and you had to just deal with it there and then. But to look back was something that is not. It wouldn't have been good for me. So I knew, like from the past, that if you have to deal with something emotionally, you have to deal with it. You have to deal with it, but you can choose when. So I packaged it, and I just I decided to get on with my life. I went to college. I enrolled in college again. I did a access course, access to university, and then I was successful in the access course, and I got into university. There were some funding issues along the way, but they were sorted out. Alhamdulillah. I went to university for 3 years. So college was 1 year, university was 3 years.
Where did you go to university?
It's a London university. I won't say which one specifically. I took up from where I left off before I became Muslim, and then went on my kind of trip. And yeah, so during university I got married, and at the end of the university, I became a father.
What kind of degree did you get?
It was a Bachelor's of Science in Social Policy. It was my first subject. It was a change for me because I think it's kind of like college. Was the first time that I actually wrote an essay, because most of my subjects before that were kind of electronics, physics, science-based, and this was a switch. This was a switch to writing, which is strange, but I guess it was just that whole trend. I went back into that welfare thing again, that social policy, because when I came out of Guantánamo, I had this thing that I wanted to understand how governments affect people, their people, and the welfare was one of them, and social policy was something I came across. It's a relatively new subject. I think in America you call it public policy, but they overlap, but they're not the same thing in totality.
Where did you meet your wife?
Oh, well, Islamically you don't kind of, it's not by chance. So you arrange to meet. So my aunt said she knows someone who's looking to get married, and then we met in the mosque with the imam there, and then the imam said talk for 2 weeks and then come back. So we talked for 2 weeks over the phone, came back, and he said, is there any issues, everything going okay? Okay, talk for another 2 weeks. So we talked for another 2 weeks, and he come back, so what's your decision? And then we decided to get married. We decided to get married, and then I'm a father. There's a baby boy.
How old?
He's gonna be 2 soon. He's like 1 month away from 2. Yeah, terrible 2. I've heard terrible 2. They get naughty when they're 2, and he's getting a bit naughty.
In Mosam's book, he says that you went for counseling.
Counseling.
It's like a psychological counseling?
No, not really. I went to Helen Bamber for a number of things, but no extensive counseling. No. I don't remember that part of it. It's a long time since I read his book, but I don't remember that part. But yeah, no. Yeah, so what was that? So I finished university, and then I was looking for work, and then I came to Cageprisoners.
How did you come to Cageprisoners? How did you find them?
Okay, so what happens is until up to February, this is 2009, 2010. I think it's 2009. Things were going rosy, and then the credit crunch happened, and then people were losing jobs left, right, and centre. I thought to myself, I'm set. I'm going to leave university, and then I'm going to get a good job and get on with my life, etc. That didn't happen. I had this thing about. I guess I wanted to prove to myself that I'm more than Guantánamo. That Guantánamo is just a part of my life. It's not the totality of who I am and what I am about. But I haven't been able to get away from Guantánamo, and no matter where I go, it kind of follows me. And trying to find a job, etc., with this big hole, trying to explain. If you explain, they don't want to know, and if you try to kind of massage it, it doesn't work. So to find a job wasn't. So basically, with Cageprisoners, I decided to approach them, to see whether I could, with my degree and so forth, utilize an opportunity to come on board and do some good work. Before then, I'd steered away from anything to do with Guantánamo and the news, etc. I just shut myself off. But it come to about 5 years, and I decided that after 5 years, I'm going to have to open that package, and this is one good way of doing it. So after 5 years, I joined Cageprisoners and opened that package.
Had you heard about them before?
Yeah, when I came out, then I heard about them, and I come across them a few times. And I tried to keep in touch. But obviously I was doing something else. I was busy with my studies and etc., or trying to work, and so I didn't really keep close touch. But they kept in some touch, and obviously through the other detainees as well. There was some contact and some mention of them.
Do you remember one of the early projects that you might have worked on when you first joined?
It was a Horn of Africa report. Asim Qureshi had started it, and I was supposed to finish it. So it was interesting how, you know, in a different kind of context, you saw similar things and I could relate. My experience was giving me kind of an insight in a way. I could see, you know, you're not just reading about it on a theoretical level. You know, I understand what it is. If someone gives their testimony and say they went through this and etc. You know, I have a deeper understanding than a normal person would if they're just reading it on face value.
And what were some of the findings of the Horn of Africa?
It's always the same: rendition, torture, abuse, no due process and stuff. Our work is always the same. It's not so much just maybe the distinction that the same kind of dynamic as you've got Afghanistan, you've got Pakistan, and you've got other areas like Guantánamo Bay. It's kind of replicated in the Horn of Africa. So it's different countries, but they play the same role. So that was a finding. That was Arsen's finding. I just had to complete the report.
That was the first piece of research you did?
Yeah, that was the first piece.
Were you hired as a researcher?
I was hired as a researcher, yeah. And then, and then it changed to caseworker and volunteer coordinator, which is what I am now.
What was involved in that change?
It's just kind of just a change in title, but it's more or less the same. Just instead of dealing with writing a report, I started just dealing with individual cases themselves, a caseworker. And then because Cageprisoners was expanding, so we were getting interns who were doing the report writing, so it doesn't make sense that I do the report writing as well, so I might as well do some casework. And then Asim Qureshi kind of got promoted to executive director, so he has to deal with the bureaucracy, and he was a caseworker before, so someone had to fill that kind of void.
Can you give a couple of examples of cases from that period? Your earliest cases?
Well, from that period, there's been a lot of cases.
Oh no, I mean, yeah.
Or perhaps a case that for you was particularly striking. I'm sure many of them are, but.
I've dealt with so many cases that just to pick out one, it's they kind of. I think you see the same thing. There's not really any kind of distinction between the cases, unfortunately. It's the same. It's just torture.
What is the same thing you see?
Torture, rendition, no due process, just detained without trial. The same stupid questions, profiling, etc. The names change, but it's.
Can you be a little more specific? What are the particular things?
Torture, rendition,
right, okay.
Rendition, held without due process, detention, abuse, that kind of thing.
And how are you helping people? What do you do actually? Refer people to places, or what is the actual work?
No, we try to kind of bring awareness to a case or a set of cases. We work, that's one aspect of our work. We're also kind of in consultancy role, so any lawyers or anyone working in legal aspect on a case may come to us to ask us because they may not understand the kind of the Muslim issues, the wider issues in certain cases. So they may believe certain things, like for instance, a Guantánamo Bay detainee accused is a Shia and is accused of being Al-Qaeda, which is not going to happen. It's not going to happen. It doesn't work, but for a lawyer would not know that kind of dynamic until they come across Muslims or people like us and Cageprisoners who will tell them, look, this is not going to happen. A Pakistani accused of being a high-level Al-Qaeda, high-ranking in Al-Qaeda is not going to happen. There's a certain hierarchy amongst Muslims, unfortunately, but Pakistani is not up there. There's not going to be over an Arab in that way. So, we work in that consultancy. And then obviously some people will come to us having some issues, harassment by the security services and so forth. And we refer them to appropriate lawyers, because not all lawyers are the same. They don't all have the same heart when it comes to this kind of work. We try to help them to clarify things to them as well. And then we try to clarify the misunderstandings in the war on terror and kind of the misinformation that's put out there as a counter.
And your focus, your geographical focus is Is it in the Horn of Africa or is it across the board?
It's the whole world. I'm Cageprisoners caseworker for the whole world.
So you're handling cases everywhere?
Yeah, I go everywhere. Well, it's sitting at my desk, but yeah, I can be anywhere.
Are you able to travel, or has that are there still restrictions in place?
Until recently, I wasn't, but those restrictions have been lifted. So yeah, I should be able to travel. I haven't tried it, but you know, there shouldn't be. There's nothing kind of overt that will stop me from traveling.
Talked earlier about the differences between Sunni and Shia. Talked about the diversity of the Muslim community. How do you deal with that diversity in your job today?
How do I deal with the diversity? You know, the war on terror doesn't make any distinction, so I don't have to. It's that simple. The war on terror doesn't care whether you're Sunni or Shia, whether you're from one school of thought or another, or you're Sufi or whatever, or Salafi, whatever. It doesn't care. You know, the war on terror has a very kind of monolithic view of Muslims, and then you're Muslim, whether you're practicing or not, etc. So when it comes to me as a caseworker, I deal with the cases that come to me, and that distinction doesn't have to be made.
Do the geographical distinctions present a problem?
No, not really. No. It's kind of, you know, I wouldn't say a convergence of policy, but you know, policies are similar across the world. You know, it makes my job easy, but it's kind of troubling.
I wonder if we could talk now about your reflections on Guantanamo in terms of where you are today and what has been the long-term effect on your life of the whole of the experience.
Well, I had this thinking that time heals, and after 5-6 years I'm going to get, you know, just over it, and after 5-6 years I can open that package and I can start dealing with the issue. This is not a situation I've been in before, but you know, it hasn't been like that. So I don't know. It just seems that, you know, as time goes by, I don't know what it is, but maybe it affects me more, or I perceive it's affecting me more. You know, I've tried to get away from Guantánamo Bay and try to move on with my life. Like I said, it doesn't define me, but it's something that I haven't been able to do. The worst thing, I think, is that, you know, wrong has been done to me. They could have gone about it in a better way, in due process. You know, if you think I've done anything wrong, you treat it as a crime and you bring me forward before a court of law, and then, you know, I have to face up to whatever allegations you have based on evidence. But that wasn't done, so a wrong has been done to me and an injustice, and that skew in the scales always remains, and because of that I cannot move on. I don't see that, you know, I thought I could move on, but I can't move on, you know. And I'm seeing that the war on terror and the US administration, they're not anytime soon going to say sorry or change their ways. They're just going to carry on stubbornly in what they're doing. And you know, it just goes to show that, you know, I really don't know what to say about it. But
you've suffered because of the war on terror. You're now working for people who have suffered, who are suffering rather. What does justice look like for you? What would be just?
What would be just? In Islam, the Sharia, we have our law is very close to the law of Moses. It's eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. I really don't believe in anything like a superstructure, or you know, when you say the state, or you know, the state did this, or an administration, it's not. I believe in collectives of people. You know, they're like a cooperative. It's collectives of people, and there were collectives of people who decided to do what they did to me. And justice is that the same thing is done to them. It's that simple. Eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. The only justice there is Sharia law, And really, Guantánamo Bay showed me that I wasn't wrong in going to Afghanistan. I wasn't wrong in going to want to live under the Sharia. I wasn't barbarized. I wasn't treated badly under Sharia. Well, I was treated badly under Western law. Guantánamo Bay. That's what I was treated under. And justice to me is Sharia, and those people brought to a Sharia court, and then they get their comeuppance. And I hope that's eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth.
What are the long-term effects on the Muslim community, the international?
On the war on terror.
War on terror.
There's I'll say two world views, but then someone will probably dispute me and then but I'll say there's two world views. There's the view that the 21st century is the American century, and then there's the view that the 21st century is the Islamic century. We lost our Khalifa in 1924. I believe that by 2024 we'll get it back. And then the war on terror, what it's done is unify the Muslims, because to me, Islam wouldn't have unified the Muslims. As long as there's no one single authority, while the cat's away, the mice will play. People will just say what they want, they'll do what they want, and then they'll say, oh, I'm a good Muslim, and so forth. The only thing that unifies the Muslims is the enmity of our enemies. That's the hate of our enemies is the only thing that's going to unify us. And sometimes I've been surprised by the things that Bush has done and Obama have done. To the point I think to myself, are they secretly Muslim or something? This is the only way the policies that they're putting forth is unifying the Muslims. And then the result will be Khalifa. I really believe that. The Islamic Emirate of Afghanistan was a false dawn. And the darkness after a false dawn is always darker than the night itself. But the result is it's going to be Khalifa. And that is the future. And I may be wrong, maybe 2024 so forth, but that's my hope, that this century is the Islamic century. And Islam will come back as a political power in the world after being nearly 100 years not being that power. Other people have a different viewpoint. They think America is going to be the predominant power, and American hegemony or American empire is going to be predominant in the future. I don't believe that.
Can you read that in the events of Tunisia and Egypt?
Yeah.
The events going on now?
Yeah, the thing is that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ has prophesied the future. Obviously no one can pinpoint it, so you can't pinpoint it with a date. So I say 2024, but that's just me. It's just my opinion, it doesn't mean anything. But he said, I can't remember in the narration, he said that you have the righteous Khalifa, and then after that I can't remember, there's something, and then there will be kings, and then there will be dictators, and then after dictators there will be the righteous Khalifa again. The period we were in is dictators, and then it doesn't say that it will go to anything else except the righteous Khalifa. So the dictators in the Middle East, they haven't been removed, because it's not Sharia law being applied there, but it's a good sign that as in the 1990s and so forth, all we had was dictators, but we never saw any end to it. We know that the righteous Khalifa will come, but it may not be in our lifetime. Now what we're seeing is the unification of Muslims, and maybe the call is not towards Sharia and Islam, but it's a step in that direction.
I've reached the end.
Yeah, I think
Good place to start?
Oh yeah,
Place to start.
good place to start. Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thank you
so
very
much
much.
for this.
Thank you.